Chapter 1300. The pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first. Chin Mo repeated these words, reaching out lazily to turn off her phone. It sounds like you're the only one who thinks it. Bo Jiu glanced over. Alright, regardless of whether you have such intentions, I do. The pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first. Is that the reason you joined the team? Chin Mo asked nonchalantly. Bo Jiu replied seriously, I was bewitched by Brother Mo's beauty and couldn't help myself. I even signed a contract to sell myself for 3 years. Brother Mo is the legal representative of the team. That means I'm the sugar daddy. Chin Mo chuckled, the corners of his lips lifting as he watched the person in his arms. Bo Jiu finally understood what it meant to say too much was bound to slip up. She started to change the topic. That's not it, I'm definitely richer than you. I entered the team to sleep with you. Oh. Was it an employee sleeping with the boss? Or was it a member sleeping with the captain? Chin Mo asked with a smile on his face. Bo Jiu knew she wouldn't be able to get anything out of this conversation. Hence, she reached for her phone and prepared to play another round. The man was looking at her from behind, but his posture didn't change. He was still holding her in his arms. Why aren't you killing beasts? It hasn't refreshed yet, it's been less than 10 seconds. I forgot. It refreshed 120 seconds after the kill, it's out now. Bo Jiu paused, glancing up. How did you know? Did he remember? Or did he remember? Is it difficult? Chin Mo tapped the screen. After watching you play so many rounds, it's easy to come up with a conclusion. Bo Jiu had forgotten that even though the Almighty had lost his memory, he was still a genius, especially as a psychologist. No one could compare to him in terms of memory. How long can my blue energy last? 90. How long will the Tyrant King fall into darkness? 10 minutes after the start of the game. Bo Jiu's eyes lit up. How long will my big move take to recover? Are you testing me? Or do you want me to get familiar with the game? Chin Mo looked at the person in his arms and smiled, but the warmth in his eyes dimmed. I'm not someone who likes to play games. I liked to play games in the past, but that doesn't mean I like it now. Bo Jiu glanced up, noticing his slight impatience. She switched off her phone. I won't play if you don't like it. I thought you liked it since you were so excited about messing with me. That's because you're playing, Chin Mo said suddenly. Both of them were stunned. Chin Mo frowned. Bo Jiu couldn't stop herself from laughing. Chin Mo leaned forward. Very proud. That's right. Bo Jiu's eyes lit up. Brother Mo, does this mean that you like me a little? Chin Mo's voice was calm and he laughed. You are my sugar daddy, how can I not like you? He was pretending to be gentle again. What else could Bo Jiu say? As long as you like it. On the other hand, Chin Mo's eyes deepened as though he was still wondering why he had blurted out such a sentence. However, there was nothing wrong with playing with domesticated prey. She was likable after all. But there was one thing. She didn't know if it was because he didn't allow her to play games. She followed him wherever he went, even when he went to the bathroom, like a little tail. Chapter 1301. Nothing much, I just wanted to ask where my reward is. Bo Jiu hadn't forgotten what the Almighty had said. As long as she destroyed the sorcerer, there would be a reward. Chin Mo arched a brow in amusement. She had followed him all the way just for a reward. Wasn't she childish? Bo Jiu pouted when he didn't reply. Are you trying to fool me? Close your eyes. Chin Mo reached out and tapped on her frown. Was she throwing a tantrum? Bo Jiu broke into a smile and closed her eyes obediently. It wasn't easy to get a kiss these days. To match the Almighty's height, she even tiptoed. Chin Mo watched her actions and couldn't help but smile. He placed the things in his hands into her pants pocket and said nonchalantly, "It's done." Done? Bo-jo opened her eyes. He hadn't even touched her. How was it done? Aren't you going to kiss me? Bo-jo asked, disappointment evident on her face. Chin Mo asked, what's going on in your head? Didn't I say it before? Bo-jo replied innocently. Chin Mo was reminded of the answer she had given him. 2 words, sleep with him. Was he that easy to sleep with? Chin Mo didn't look at her face and pretended to take the thing back. Since that's the case, you probably don't want the reward I gave you. Who said I don't want it? Brother Mo, how can I take back the reward I gave you? Bo-jo blocked him with one hand and pressed her other hand into her pocket. That was when she realized what it was. It was a round piece wrapped in a beautiful packaging. A chocolate-flavored milk candy. Bo-jo paused. She was suddenly reminded of how he had been like this in the military. Regardless of the time, he would always have a piece of candy in his pocket. It was because she liked to eat it. Chin Mo frowned when he saw the person in front of him not moving. What did she mean? She didn't like it. That shouldn't be possible. From his observation, this girl really liked to eat sweets, and among all the sweets, this was her favorite flavor. But why was she looking like that? Chin Mo stuffed one hand into his pocket when he didn't see the smile or the hug he had expected. His mood didn't change, but he shouldn't have asked that question. Why? You don't like it? When she heard the familiar voice, Bo-jo snapped out of her reverie. She tightened her grip on the candy, her eyes turning into crescent moons. I like it a lot. Chin Mo glanced at her. You like it very much. However, he didn't seem surprised at all. Instead, he seemed to be reminiscing about something. Chin Mo tilted his head, his stray hair perfectly covering his eyes. As long as you like it. What this person said and what she thought were not the same. But it was normal. Usually, people would miss their lovers when they didn't lose their memories. With this in mind, Chin Mo lifted the corners of his lips slightly. Even though he was smiling, there wasn't any warmth in it. Of course, Bo-jo wouldn't be able to detect his presence. He would only hold her waist in bed and harshly bully her. Only when she begged for mercy would he kiss the corner of her eyes. He would not go to the last step. Chapter 1302. The sentence had probably left a deep impression on her. The next day, when she woke up, Bo-jo was still by his side. Brother Mo, did you talk to me yesterday? Bo-jo followed him and asked, Brother Mo, did you talk to me yesterday? Talk. Chin Mo stood by the side of the bed, buttoning his shirt casually. When he heard her words, his well-defined fingers paused in the halo. They were so white that they were almost transparent. What did you say? Bo-jo watched the lazy expression on his face and frowned when she heard his question. Was she muddle-headed from sleep? You said you're the one beside me now. Chin Mo smiled. Would I say something like that? Indeed, it doesn't seem like something you would say. Other than his poisonous tongue, the Almighty didn't have any sweet nothings. Bo-jo stood up, stepping onto the floor barefooted. Perhaps she really was muddle-headed from sleep. Unexpectedly, the moment her feet touched the ground, he grabbed the back of her collar and threw her back onto the bed. Put on your shoes. Just like when they were young, he would always stare at her. Bo-jo glanced at his face. She bent down and pulled the slippers up. That should be enough. Chin Mo couldn't be bothered with him, heading into the bathroom to wash up. Who knew that the little hooligan would follow behind? When he was squeezing the toothpaste, he didn't even know to roll up his sleeves, wasting his smart face. Bo-jo noticed the Almighty's gaze and replied calmly, Brother Mo, the team will be here today, they are all your brothers. Chin Mo squeezed the toothpaste lazily, replying softly, let's have a gathering then, Bo-jo said, reaching for the basin. But Chin Mo was one step ahead, grabbing her hand. His toothbrush was still in his mouth, his expression indifferent. He tilted his head slightly, his fingers rolling up her sleeves. Bojo watched the face under the glow. It was handsome and familiar. Perhaps there wasn't any difference. If you look at me again and recall the past, I'm going to get angry. Bojo couldn't tell if he was joking or sincere. All she knew was that he reached out, pressing the back of her neck towards him, his voice slow. Don't you know to roll up your sleeves when washing your face? How old are you? Bojo's ability to take care of herself wasn't very good. Now that her face had been washed, she couldn't help smiling. The Almighty's tone was filled with disappointment. He was just short of adding little Bojo's name in front. Bojo smiled and drank a glass of milk. The Almighty had also poured the milk for her. He had even tested the temperature with his hand before giving it to her. It was becoming more and more like what he had done when he was young. Bojo was delighted. Her good mood lasted until she sent a message to Lin Feng. The naive Lin Feng was still nervous. Do you think we should bring something over? Bojo didn't like typing, so she decided to send a voice message. We don't lack anything at home. Grandfather Butler made a whole roasted lamb. We can sit around the table and talk while we eat. You guys can train here after you're done eating. There are 13 high-end aliens, it's enough for you guys to play together. After hearing this, Lin Feng turned his head away, his expression a little dazed. Yunhu glanced at him. Why? Is it inconvenient for Little Spade? Very convenient. Lin Feng stood up. You can go there directly to train, but who would make a whole lamb handcuffed at home? Chapter 1303. When Lin Feng saw the grandfather butler that Bojo mentioned, he realized that there was really someone who could handcuff a whole lamb at home. At first, when they rang the doorbell, they paused for a moment when they saw the person. Especially Rao Rong, who was standing at the front. Initially, he had a cool posture, but after coming into contact with the old man's face, he paused, apologizing to him in English. Then, he turned around and asked Lin Feng, Are you sure you didn't find the wrong door? 109, this is the room. Lin Feng was also puzzled. Why was it a handsome British grandfather who opened the door? Should he send another voice message to ask Little Spade? Just as he was about to pick up his phone, an old man dressed in a well-ironed suit opened his mouth. He was well-mannered like an aristocrat. Young master is still adjusting the network. Please come in. Rao Rong rubbed his nose in fluent Chinese. Lin Feng's eyes widened even more. Young master. Which era did this term come from? But if it was the network, it had to be Little Spade. All of them looked as if they were sleepwalking. Even Uncle Ian put the cigarette he was about to put in his mouth into his hand. This situation was a little unexpected. Especially the Englishman who was wearing a black apron, his voice was very pleasant. Today, I have prepared a whole roasted lamb for everyone. Young master said that all of you like meat. Yes, they loved meat. But there was such a huge iron shelf in front of him, and behind him stood a British butler holding a professional knife and fork. This made them a little confused. The room was full of fragrance. Lin Feng could even see the whole goat in the center being shackled to a golden color. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The oil was still dripping into the fire. It couldn't be any more fragrant. As for the old man, it was obvious that he was a professional chef. He picked up the machete and cut the sheep a few times. He was skilled and gentlemanly, as if he was performing. Coco touched his chin. This technique, huh? Shui Yao Yao leaned over, wanting to ask what was wrong. Coco bit the rabbit in his arms. It's so cool. I saw something similar when I was attending the Dubai Prince's conference with my dad. That's why our meal was at the level of a prince. Lin Feng was in a trance. Coco stopped talking. He was smelling the meat. It smelled so good. Roasted whole lamb was different from normal barbecue. The smell of fruit wood mixed with cumin powder burst forth with a fragrance that could instantly make one's stomach growl. Very few people in the family would do that. Unless he went to the Mongolian steppe. Rao Rong wasn't as surprised as before. After all, he had interacted with that person previously. If the other party was only the young master of the Fu family, it would be impossible for him to do this. But that was Z. A world-class hacker. During his time in the dark, he had heard many things about that person. He came from a family of hackers. Its origin was unfathomable. Some people said that Z had the aristocratic bloodline of a 19th-century Oriental and Westerner. However, this had never been confirmed. After all, they did not know whether the person was a man or a woman. If he hadn't interacted with Little Spade, he wouldn't have realized she was Z. Now it seemed that he was really too rich. However, he had never understood. Why was Z always in the Fifth Avenue according to the information they had found? But Little Spade was in Jiang City. None of that mattered now. Chapter 1304. Bo Jiu was adjusting the network when she heard the commotion downstairs. She grabbed Qin Mo's hand and walked down the stairs. Probably because her hair had been pressed down when she slept last night, a strand of her silver hair was sticking up. Because she was adjusting the network cable, there was a layer of dust on the tip of her nose. She looked rather handsome. The moment she came down, Lin Feng shouted. Lin Feng let out a cry and opened his arms, wanting to hug her. But before his hand could reach her shoulder, Bo Jiu stopped him. Swoosh! A poker card flew over and stabbed him in the shoe. He stomped his feet in pain. F***ck, where did this poker card come from? Why did it stab me so? Before Lin Feng could finish his sentence, he was rooted to the ground by Qin Mo's gaze. That gaze was deep and unfathomable. It was casual and without a hint of warmth. Lin Feng stilled, calling out in a probing manner, "Captain." Qin Mo smiled. "Sorry, my hand slipped just now." Oh. Lin Feng was suddenly at a loss for words. His captain's politeness was so strange. In the past, when he had been disciplining them, he had never apologized to them. It was normal for him to punish them by not allowing them to eat meat. Those who were familiar with him knew that he would only be so polite to outsiders. Were they outsiders now? Just thinking about this made Lin Feng feel a little uncomfortable. However, it was only for a short while. Nothing was more important than his captain's safe return. The naive Lin Feng believed Qin Mo's words cheerfully. He reached over to place his hand on Bo Jiu's shoulder. "Little Spade, I brought a dozen beers, isn't it nice?" Swoosh! This time, the poker card flew over his head, accurately cutting off his hair. Lin Feng stilled, looking at his captain with a bitter expression. "Did your hand slip again?" "Of course." Qin Mo smiled faintly. "I wanted to stab your hand." Lin Feng turned his head, wanting to complain to his teammates. He hadn't expected Yun Hu to be the only humane one who knew to pull him behind his back. The others only used their gazes to tell him that he deserved it. F***ck. What kind of people were they? Little Spade was even worse. She said with a serious face, "Team Flower Lin, I've wanted to tell you for a long time. I have a family now. Don't touch me all the time. My boyfriend won't be happy. Don't touch me so casually in the future." Lin Feng. "You called me brother. When we were drinking ergote, you put your arm around my shoulder and said that I was a submissive with no threat. I didn't expect you to be such a little spade." With this commotion, the group of people seemed to be the same as before. Uncle Ian was chuckling with a cigarette in his mouth, Coco and Feng Shang were whispering into each other's ears, while Rao Rong and Lin Qintao were adding the finishing touches. They didn't seem uncomfortable at all. Bo Jiu displayed her love with a handsome face, her methods a little shameless. Qin Mo sat beside her lazily, his arm resting on the back of the chair. Even though there wasn't any intimacy, one could feel that the two of them were one, even now. There was a lot of flirtatious talk in the esports circle. Everyone was talking while eating and drinking, and the whole place was filled with laughter. Shui Yaoyao looked at this group of people, her heart heating up. She really felt good. Even though she was covered in scars. Chapter 1305. As a qualified butler, of course, the old man sensed the change in Shui Yaoyao's mood. He very considerately passed the napkin over and pushed the dessert forward. He said in a low voice, "This is young master's favorite. Paired with lemon tea, it will improve a lady's mood." Shui Yaoyao's eyes widened in shock at his action. She lifted her head and met the youngster's gentle gaze. Now, she finally understood why Her Highness Jiu was so warm. With the old man around, the upbringing was imperceptible. In reality, Shui Yaoyao's thoughts were both right and wrong. If Grandpa Butler knew about this, he would definitely sigh and say with pride and helplessness, "My young master's gentlemanly demeanor is much stronger than the men outside, but I'm clearly teaching her lessons on being a lady." No matter how she looked at it, it was a case of bad upbringing. But in Grandfather Butler's heart, his young lord had always been a rare treasure. That was why he had prepared everything. Lin Feng couldn't help glancing over when he was wiping the cutlery with a white cloth. His posture was so elegant. Where exactly did Little Spade poach him from? He was amazing. Lin Feng couldn't hide his words, he would always ask questions directly. Bo Jiu chuckled. Grandfather Butler was around when I was young, but I don't have the ability to poach him over. Qin Mo nodded. Who else could it be? Lin Feng was confused. It couldn't be the Fu family, right? Oh right. Bo Jiu placed the cup in her hand down, changing the topic naturally. Brother Mo's hand is healed. Grandfather Butler performed the surgery and it's very flexible now. It doesn't hurt when he twists his wrist, you don't have to worry anymore. She hadn't told anyone about this news. Now, it was released. Everyone at the table was stunned for a moment, and then they unconsciously laughed. They were probably too happy. Bo Jiu knew what they were thinking. For the past 3 years, he had been competing with an injured hand. For the sake of Supreme Alliance, he had given up his best position as a jungler and couldn't invade the enemy's jungle as he pleased. It was probably because he was worried that his injury would relapse at a crucial moment and he would lose the competition. He knew Supreme Alliance couldn't leave him, hence, even when the doctor told him to rest for 2 years, he didn't listen. Because everyone knew what 2 years meant in the esports circle. In 2 years, those who said they liked you would fall in love with other teams. In 2 years, an esports player's golden period might be over. 2 years, Supreme Alliance couldn't wait that long. Hence, be it Lin Feng, Yun Hu, or even Feng Yi, they all felt guilty. Countless times, they would think that it would have been great if they could have persevered until that person came back. After realizing that dream, they could have retired. That person would be able to recuperate in peace instead of wasting all of his talent and pride bit by bit like this. Indeed, many people would not understand. How did Feng Yi feel when he saw Spadesy maneuvering the game character and gliding through the wilderness like the wind? It wasn't just the light of Supreme Alliance. At that time, he thought, finally, such a shadow has finally appeared. I can make that person come back. Chapter 1306. Yun Hu could tell what was hidden in Lin Feng's eyes. That naive guy's first reaction was to send a message to Feng Yi, who was still in the company. Fox Feng, do you know that Captain's hand has recovered? Ha ha ha, Captain's hand has recovered. If Zhao Sanpang and the others dare to be arrogant in the group again, I'll close the door and release Captain. The Almighties all had their own almighty groups, especially those that were at their level. Yun Hu wondered if this person had forgotten that Captain had lost his memory and couldn't play at all. But he didn't stop him, watching as he chatted with Feng Yi, adding, I feel like he can still play for another 10 years. When they gathered together, there seemed to be a kind of strength. They could still be like this, 10 years younger. When Feng Yi saw the WeChat message, he was still dealing with matters online. He hadn't slept for a day and had to drink with the media. His suit jacket hung on his arm, the fatigue of the business world. The little assistant beside him said, Boss Feng, why don't you sleep for a while? We'll keep an eye on them. He held onto his phone and suddenly broke into a smile. She didn't know what he saw. He placed his hand on his neck and pressed it, returning to his smiling fox self. I'll keep an eye on them. Go get some coffee and reward everyone for their hard work before the Asian Cup. The little assistant wanted to say that it wasn't hard, but she sneaked a glance at him. In the past, she didn't understand the concept of an esports company. She thought it was just a simple game where the players just had to compete properly. Now that she was here, she understood. A good team. They didn't just need players to rush forward, they also needed someone to support them from the back. He had to think of everything and take precautions. If he couldn't think of anything, he had to deal with it immediately. Because this was related to the internet, the information spread quickly. It was fine if there was a small conflict, but what he was most afraid of was people distorting the truth. For example, now. The person who claimed to be a fan of the team was obstructing the team with every sentence. It was obvious that she didn't want Spade Z to return. Once the public relations department was in charge, she would say that she was disappointed in the team, that her feelings were wasted and that they were all fed to the dogs. If you responded to these things, it would be the team being unreasonable. Feng Yi usually saw such things. He would sit in front of the computer and smoke occasionally. He would control it for a while before returning to the matter at hand. This was the only way Spade Z could come back. Probably because of the good news, the atmosphere at the dining table was good until Rao Rong stood up, looking towards Qin Mo. Since your hand is healed, let's have a match. We can see how well we can cooperate. Lin Feng's hand froze. There was no reply from Coco either. At that moment, the room was extremely quiet. Qin Mo was the only one who was still holding onto a knife and fork. He cut a piece of lamb with a perfect posture and placed it between his lips. After he finished eating, he curved his lips slightly. I'm not interested in games. All of a sudden, the atmosphere around them changed, and it became slightly cold. Lin Feng immediately turned to look at Rao Rong, as though to say, we've already made a deal, why did you change your mind at the last minute? Chapter 1307. Rao Rong knew that he was the only one who would say such words to Qin Mo. Everyone in Supreme Alliance had been groomed by him, so of course he wouldn't say it. The only one who wasn't afraid of Qin Mo would spoil him to the core. How was he going to change the situation if he didn't interact with him? Besides, it was Qin Mo, he couldn't just say that he wasn't interested. It wasn't just the same team, even his former opponent was waiting for him to display his true abilities in the Asian Cup. If he needed a bad guy, he would be the one. How about it? Rao Rong laughed lightly, continuing, do you want to play? Or do you think you're not good enough that you don't even dare to play with me? As his words fell, the surrounding atmosphere completely dropped to a freezing point. Qin Mo placed his cutlery down, meeting his gaze, his voice calm. I seem to be looked down upon, how am I going to play? That's right, Qin Mo didn't even know what it meant to play. Me, you, Lin Feng, Yun Hu, and Uncle Yin, the five of us will play together and see what results we can achieve. Rao Rong glanced at the youngster. Z doesn't have to participate. Once she enters the game, I'm afraid she will either win or stay by your side to protect you. She won't be able to gauge your current standard. All right. One word. Qin Mo grabbed his jacket and stood up. There was a smile on his lips, but his emotions didn't fluctuate. It was hard to tell if he was happy or angry. There was a huge room upstairs filled with computers, perfect for playing. But Bojo didn't move. Qin Mo glanced at her. What is it? Are you afraid my fragile heart can't take it? No. Bojo stood up. I was wondering if I could sit beside you when you play, you probably aren't familiar with the character's abilities. When Qin Mo heard this, his eyes finally warmed up a little. This fellow still had a conscience. Wasn't today's show just to get him to play? Qin Mo lowered his head, smirking. When he glanced up, he smiled faintly. You're my sugar daddy, where do you want to sit if not beside me? My legs? There's no need for your legs, it might affect your game, she replied seriously. Lin Feng was about to vomit blood when he heard this. You're just going to sit if it doesn't affect your game. Also, what was the term, sugar daddy? Little Spade, do you still want Captain to call you daddy? What did you say to Captain when he lost his memory? Lin Feng wanted to have a good talk with Little Spade, but his captain was guarding against him like a wolf. It really hurt his heart. However, it wasn't easy for them to sit together and play together again. Everyone was a little excited. Yao Yao, Lin Chintao, and the others also turned on their computers. Rao Rong sat there, placing the earpiece on his head. I'm the mid lane. Top lane. Uncle Ian still had a cigarette in his mouth. Lin Feng chose a healer support. I'll use this to practice. I'll play the ad carry. Yun Hu tilted his head, scanning the situation online. They all use large sizes. The impact of using a main account was that once you went online, you would immediately be targeted by a large number of fans. Usually, just one person alone could cause a shockwave. Now that the four of them had come online at the same time, it was like a bomb had been thrown into the air, blowing up the entire game's fairness. Chapter 1308. When Qin Mo's game ID appeared in everyone's line of sight, the entire internet seemed to have paused for 0.1 seconds. Then, it really exploded. The public chat exploded with messages. Aw! Screams filled the entire game. My almighty Qin. What did I see? My almighty Qin. I can't take it anymore, calm down, let me take another look. Oh my god, it's really my almighty Qin. I jumped off the bed excitedly and ran 3 rounds downstairs. There's a surprise online today. What? Almighty Qin is back. Where? Click on the Almighty's view, the first room shows Almighty Qin and his team. F***CK, Black 5. I can't believe I'll be able to see this in my lifetime. Don't stop me, I want to see my husband. The game hadn't started and Qin Mo was still choosing his character. It wasn't just here, even the official Weibo was bombarded. No matter what Black 5 said, he was disappointed. But there was one thing, the popularity of the official Weibo didn't decrease at all. Every esports team knew what the name Qin Mo represented. It was the time when they didn't know his background and wanted to poach him over, but he refused to leave, choosing the small manager, Feng Yi. All the businessmen knew that it was a hot topic, traffic, popularity, and godly operating skills that no one could surpass. He wasn't a celebrity. But he was more popular than a celebrity. Many people couldn't catch up to him. The popularity continued to rise. It was the same for the number of spectators. Why hasn't Almighty Qin chosen his character? The jungler's position is empty, Almighty Qin will definitely do it. I have a feeling that I'll be crying because of my husband's cool maneuvering. But this time, Qin Mo took way too long to choose his character. Lin Feng tilted his head and glanced over. His captain held the mouse in one hand and asked the youngster beside him casually, which character did you choose previously? Do you want to use the one I used? Bo Jiu chuckled. She turned her body and held onto the mouse through his hand. Her breath was seductive. This is the most handsome assassin in Hero. He's dressed in white and has a long sword in his hand. His movements are graceful and when he's powerful, he can turn the whole place upside down. Many girls like him and they call him hubby or little brother in private. You like it too? Qin Mo clicked confirm while asking a certain someone absent-mindedly. What's there to like about a fake character? Bo Jiu held her cheeks and smiled devilishly. I like it. Really? Qin Mo had the urge to change this character and choose a new one. His thin lips were a little cold. He didn't look handsome at all. He was just a pretty boy with a wine flask hanging on his waist. He looked sloppy. Ha! Previously, he had thought that although the prey he had his eyes on didn't have any obvious advantages, he had a good eye. Now, it seemed that his foresight wasn't that great. Unexpectedly, before he could finish his thoughts, the youngster's voice came from the other side. The youngster's voice came from the other side of the phone again. Her breath was very close to him, as if she was speaking beside his ear. It was hot and ticklish. Brother Mo, you're the best at playing him. Honestly, in the entire game, he's the only one who looks especially handsome when you're playing him. Chapter 1309. Bo Jiu ignored Lin Feng's resentful gaze and focused on the screen. The game had begun. 5 seconds later, everyone walked out of the spring, including Qin Mo. Since they were all using their main accounts in the arena, according to the rules of the game, the opponents were all high-leveled players. This meant that even though they weren't professional players, their maneuvers were at the standard of an almighty. Being able to reach the same level as Lin Feng and the others meant that they were really good. However, the opponents hadn't expected to be matched with the professional Black Five. At the start, they hadn't noticed the nicknames. After all, there was only one principle when they played. Regardless of who they were facing, the most important thing was to raise their stars. Hence, when they entered the game and saw the number of spectators, they paused. F***CK, it can't be. Quan, did you start a live stream? No, I didn't invite you guys to live stream. Then why? Maybe it's because of the opponents. Opponents? Look at their ID. Supreme Alliance's group. I'm going crazy. What are you going crazy for? Didn't you see the comments online? Qin Mo probably won't be able to participate in the Asian Cup with that hand of his. He probably isn't in a good condition, that's why he hasn't appeared for such a long time. He's such a good team, but he didn't follow the wishes of his fans. Quan, from your tone, you don't like them? I used to be a fan, but now, I'm not interested. I do like Supreme Alliance, don't use such a tone. What's wrong with my tone? Supreme Alliance should learn from me, listen to the words of the fans. What's wrong with creating a group? Look at how many I have. That's enough, the game has begun, think about how to play. While they were chatting, everyone went to their respective positions. Quan was also a jungler, using the same character as Qin Mo. He had liked him from the start, but after he started a live stream, he had gained fans. He had wanted to gain some popularity, but Supreme Alliance didn't give him any benefits. The more he looked at him, the more he disliked him. He wasn't the only jungler in the world. There should be more people who knew how to play this character. He had only entered the industry a few years earlier and was hyped up by his fans to be a god. If he was given the same opportunity, he wouldn't be bad either. As Quan thought about it, he began to plan something. Didn't they say that he was in a bad state? Then he would make use of this opportunity to test him. If he was really weak, he would only catch him. In reality, Quan was still afraid of Qin Mo's name. It could be said that all his jungling techniques were learned from Qin Mo's videos. But he believed in the principle of the student surpassing the master. As long as they planned it well, coupled with that person's condition, they would be able to make a name for themselves. The more Quan thought about it, the more he felt that it was a good idea. For the sake of future publicity, he even pressed the record button on the top right corner. Their chances of winning this match were not very certain. The few of them couldn't defeat Supreme Alliance. However, it was not impossible to capture only one person. At that time, no matter what the result of the competition was, as long as he released the title of Exploding Almighty Qin, his popularity would naturally follow suit. If the fans were not satisfied, he would apologize again. Chapter 1310. Someone once said that there were two things in this world that shouldn't be looked at directly, the sun and the human heart. The actions of a black-hearted person were basically the same. In order to gain attention, Quan wasn't aware of how vicious his plan was. The more he thought about it, the more feasible it seemed. His long sword struck the blue buff over and over again, ready to harvest it. But he realized that the buff had been snatched a second earlier. Snatched? Quan's fingers stilled, his entire being riled up. F***ck. His teammates hadn't been aware of the situation. But when they glanced up and saw the white figure, they understood. The buff had been snatched by Almighty Qin. Ha ha ha, my heart aches for the assassin. After fighting for so long, my Almighty Qin took everything away with a single strike. Your wilderness is my home. I'm not saying this for nothing. Stealing the blue buff right off the bat, it's indeed Almighty Qin's style. The public chat was full of praise, it was a slap to Quan's face. He had wanted to crush Qin Mo, but the moment he entered the arena, he was going to be crushed. Lin Feng was puzzled. Didn't Captain lose his memory and was unable to play? How did he manage to steal the blue buff? In a high-level match, everyone knew that it wasn't easy to steal mana, unless you could accurately calculate the HP of the blue buff. After all, the opponent wasn't an idiot. It would be too easy to steal mana just because you said so. What happened? Lin Feng asked Bojio. Little Spade, are you lying to us? Actually, Captain is still good at playing, he just doesn't flaunt it. He used to be like that too. Bojio remained silent. Yunhu spoke up. Lin Feng, Almighty Lin, please look at this weak ADC. You're a support, why are you looking at the assassin instead of me? The moment Yunhu finished his sentence, he blocked the opponent's top laner between the walls. With a ferocious attack, the opponent fled back to the tower. The spectators were from Supreme Alliance's side, hence, they could hear their conversation. Lin Feng's lips twitched. How are you weak? If you're more serious, you can even kill the top laner. That's right, that's right. Almighty Yun, you're so weak that the opponent's top laner is starting to doubt his life. The fans immediately followed suit. What do you guys know? God Yun is acting like a spoiled child. How can an ad carry leave his support? So gay. Sigh, even a straight man like me is about to become gay. Shui Yao Yao looked at the words on the public screen and wanted to laugh. These fans were too cute. There was probably only one person who couldn't laugh. It was Coco. He knew his captain's maneuvers the best. That person used to sit casually in front of the computer, smoking while controlling the character to move forward nimbly. Wherever he went, not even a blade of grass would grow. After killing the wild, he still had the time to stretch out his hand to press down on his own neck. His positioning was so awesome that it was dazzling. But now, although he successfully stole the opponent's wild monster, he also plundered a lot of money. However, whether it was in terms of positioning or maneuvering, they were all too slow. It wasn't like him. The others in the team didn't notice because they were also playing the game. As a spectator, all of his attention was locked on his captain. The more he watched, the tighter he bit the rabbit ears in his arms. His heart trembled slightly. Even the air he exhaled was cold. Little Spade wasn't lying. Chapter 13:11. Coco tilted his head, glancing towards her. Little Spade must have noticed the problem. But why wasn't there any emotion on her face? She just sat there, a smile hanging on her lips as she watched her captain maneuver his character. Occasionally, she would overhear their conversation. What's his big move? He can seduce people, he's a tank. Does he have high HP? If we don't kill him, we still have to find a pushover. The last sentence was from their captain, his voice calm, as though he was teaching on the spot. Little Spade held her chin, her words unscrupulous. We'll find a pushover. Coco. These two are really. Coco didn't manage to express his sorrow, it was washed away by the shameless display of affection. On the other hand, Rao Rong, who was in the middle lane, paused. He switched to the small map and zoomed in, taking in the entire wilderness. Because he had to face an enemy, he didn't take a closer look at Qin Mo's movements. But one thing was obvious, Qin Mo's farming speed, it was so slow that Rao Rong's fingers paused. Any assassin in their profession would have cleared all the beasts in their own wilderness by now. Not to mention Qin Mo, who was faster than everyone else in terms of farming speed. It wasn't just because of his positioning, but also because he was clear about the intervals between the appearance of the beasts and the recovery time of his skills. In the entire circle, he was the only one who could use them flexibly. The title of MVP wasn't just for show. When he was farming, he could use his skills to walk. Anyone who played this game knew that money determined equipment and equipment determined your damage. The person who could farm the money the fastest would have the highest damage. That way, they would be able to finish off their opponent with one set of skills. Hence, time was extremely important in this game. Right now, even though Qin Mo's farming speed was faster than the average player, at his current level, he wasn't even a tenth of his usual skills. His positioning was erratic. Perhaps his instincts wouldn't allow him to degenerate into a noob who couldn't even use the mouse, but it was obvious that he had forgotten the consciousness of a jungler. What should an assassin do at this moment? He didn't know. Consciousness was a mysterious thing. Everyone's jungling style was different. Little Spade was also a jungler. Both of them were very skilled, leaving nothing behind wherever they went. But the feeling they gave off was different. There was a saying that an assassin did not fight to see who was more reckless, but to see who was more conscious. If one's awareness was good, even if the overall situation was against them, one could rely on commanding the battle and the assassin to lead the tempo to victory. If one's awareness wasn't good, not only would he fail to kill his opponent, he would also be suppressed and beaten. Especially in a high-end game like this. The moment Rao Rong had this thought, a figure appeared at the river in the jungle. It was the enemy's assassin. His fingers paused. He had wanted to immediately go over to help. A good mid laner would be able to coordinate with the mid laner. Not to mention Rao Rong, who had the nickname of Team Control. However, he seemed to have thought of something. He didn't move. Instead, he stood there and looked in the direction of the person in white. A faint light flashed in his eyes. Qin Mo, let me see if you still know what you have to do as an assassin in the wilderness. Chapter 13:12. For an assassin, the most important thing was to avoid danger, stand at the starting point, and counterattack. That was once your forte. How much do you remember now? Rao Rong glanced up, his eyes glistening. It was time to stop running. On the other side, Qin Mo was still fighting the wild beasts. All of a sudden, his fingers paused. He seemed to have an innate sensitivity towards danger. He controlled his character and moved towards the bushes below. On the other side of the screen, Quan sneered. Trying to escape. With that, he pressed the button to attack, using a skill to invade. She wanted to hit Qin Mo directly. When the people saw the recording, they would be able to tell whose technique was better. Unexpectedly, that person's body moved to the side, and he actually managed to evade his sword. Quan's face heated up, as though he had been punched. But it didn't matter, he wasn't the only one here. Quan turned on the voice message. Kill him. Swoosh. Another person's figure appeared as well. Unexpectedly, after Qin Mo blocked Rao Rong's attack, he shifted, his long sword by his side, temporarily leaving the enemy's line of sight. Even the second person that charged over wasn't able to catch him. But this time, it wasn't to snatch the beasts. He was killing. Because the third person had appeared. The control sorcerer. With a turn of his body, he stunned the hero that Qin Mo was controlling. This was the first time Qin Mo saw this character, hence, he wasn't sure of its attributes. He had assumed he could use the skill to shift back, but the opponent's control was marked, leaving him no room to dodge. Quan saw that Qin Mo was frozen, his smile widening. He repeated, kill him. The tank followed up with a beheading skill. In an instant, Qin Mo's HP was low. He tilted, about to enter the defense tower. Quan chased after him, using a big move to take him away. But at that moment, Qin Mo turned around and raised his long sword. With 3 swishing sounds, the silver light fell. Hound, who was at full health, lost half of it. Quan retracted his hand in shock. Qin Mo hadn't escaped. But he wouldn't be able to live either. That person had set up an electric formation for him before he died. Quan shrieked in fear. Save me. The support at the side quickly cast a heal, taking advantage of his last breath to heal him. That was how he managed to escape death. There weren't 3 of them, there were 4. 4 of them to capture a jungler. Did they not care about anything else? What kind of strategy was this? Soon, Quan gave his answer. Afraid that no one could hear him, he typed a string of words on the public chat. Almighty Qin. Almighty. Almighty Qin, if you're old, you should retire early. Don't always use your hand injury as an excuse. If you can't even beat me, why are you participating in the Asian Cup? If I were you, I would give the newbies a chance so that they won't be able to perform well and affect their reputation. You might even drag the Supreme Alliance down with you. Let me make this clear, I don't mean to insult you. Your fans are too scary, so don't come and tear me apart, hee. This was undoubtedly a challenge. Important. Everyone who saw this understood why the other side had sent 4 people to catch a jungler. Chapter 1313. Who is he? How shameless. What do you mean Almighty Qin can't even beat him? There were 4 of them trying to capture one person. I just want to ask that Quan guy, did you just get healed by your team's support? Let's see if you'll die without him. F***ck, my temper is so bad. I can't take it anymore. How could someone say such a thing? There's no need to continue watching, the game is about to end. Supreme Alliance is going to win. Indeed, it was about to end. The other side didn't care about anything. Before Lin Feng and Yun who knew what was happening, they had already attacked the other side's base. The next moment, they saw the words on the public screen. Lin Feng clicked on the mouse, preparing to run back. But before he could reach, Rao Rong turned. Using his passive skill and displacement, he reaped the harvest in an instant, leaving behind the sound of 4 consecutive kills. Lin Feng and the others didn't even need to attack the enemy's base, it was already occupied by the troops. Quan glanced at the words on the public screen, tapping the keyboard. Why are you still arguing? Didn't we agree to not argue? Qin fans are said to have high standards, but why can't I tell? Even though we lost, we were able to torture our almighty Qin. That's good enough. F***cku. Lin Feng really didn't care about anything else and directly cursed in the game. In that instant, Rao Rong regretted it. He hadn't expected such a person. By the time he reacted, it was already too late. But it was already done. Bo Jiu knew Rao Rong's method wasn't wrong. The Almighty's maneuvers were much better than when he had watched her play yesterday. But there wasn't enough time. He hadn't even understood some of the opponent's skills. There were 4 of them and every move was targeted at him. If it was the old him, Bo Jiu shifted her gaze, landing on his handsome side profile. This was the first time she felt her throat tighten. It was so tight that it felt as though something was about to spill out. The atmosphere in the computer room was at its lowest point. Qin Mo waved his hand, seemingly emotionless. He glanced down at the mouse he had been holding before glancing up at the character lying in the game. There was a moment of pause. The indignation in his heart was too familiar. It was so familiar, as though he had experienced it before. Lin Feng couldn't suppress his anger at all. Everyone knew that this wasn't the time to curse. Once a public figure cursed, there would be a lot of negative news. Even if you didn't do anything wrong. Some passers-by would also wonder why he had such an image. Not to mention those who didn't like him in the first place. They would seize this opportunity to add fuel to the fire. Quan was such a person. The moment he heard Lin Feng curse, he exclaimed, "That's scary, why are the Almighties of Supreme Alliance cursing?" Enough. It was his teammates who stopped him. After all, it was not right to speak like this. Quan didn't think that he had done anything wrong. After all, he was already dead, and the crystal base was almost gone. He seized the time to say one last sentence. "If you don't know how to jungler, then don't. If your hand speed can't keep up, then leave quickly." As soon as he finished speaking, the crystal completely exploded, and the screen was filled with silver flowers that scattered everywhere. They had clearly won, but no one could be happy. At this moment. Chapter 13-14. Bojiu, who had been silent the entire time, placed the keyboard down, her silver hair swaying slightly as she logged into the game. Her typing speed had always been fast. Before they could exit the game, Bojiu had already logged into the game. Shui Yaoyao watched the clean face. Shui Yaoyao looked at that fair face. From the beginning to the end, Highness Jiu didn't seem to say a word. Indeed, she hadn't. Even her eyes were dark and emotionless. But that was it. The audience stilled. They had never seen such a little spade before. They really had never seen such a person. Bojiu didn't waste any time, starting the battle and inviting people. She used a small account and had a medium level. Quan wasn't interested and was about to reject when a message appeared on the screen. A message appeared on the screen. "What? Didn't you say that you were good? I'm just a fan of Almighty Qin and my level isn't high. You don't even dare to accept my challenge." In order to attract more fans, Quan had already started the live stream. This meant that everyone could see it. Quan glanced at the opponent's level. He was 2 levels lower than him and wouldn't have a problem fighting him. He had an entire set of critical hit stats. Besides, he had always been confident in his maneuvering, otherwise, he wouldn't have become a streamer. Since he was here to embarrass himself, he would continue. It was a good chance to prove his skills. Quan smiled. "Look, all I did was kill Almighty Qin once and his fans couldn't take it anymore. They even said that they had good manners. Forget it, as a small-time streamer, I have no choice but to accept the challenge." With that, he clicked the accept button. After entering, he realized it was a 1v1. But it didn't matter, he would be able to torture him even more. The game started. Everyone in the room could hear the music. Both Lin Feng and Rao Rong knew what Bojiu was doing. Yin Wuyao chuckled, a cigarette dangling from his lips as he said, "Little captain, all the best, crush him. F***CK, little spade, I'll support you fully this time. I'll give you $100 for each kill." Lin Feng had to get back at him. Yunhu raised the bid calmly. 100 isn't enough, 1,000. Send the money into the red packet. Bojiu tilted her head. Send 10,000. In other words, he had to kill them 10 times. Coco stood up and grabbed the rabbit plush in his hands. Bojiu turned. "Brother Mo, come over, I have something on." "MMH?" Qin Mo's voice rose as he straightened and walked towards her. "What's the matter?" "Watch me fight." Bojiu freed one hand and held on to him. She seemed to be afraid that he wouldn't agree. She smiled and her eyes were filled with emotions. Qin Mo looked at the person in front of him and then at the hand that was tugging on his sleeve. She was as stubborn as a child. Usually, he was annoyed by this kind of child. But he did not know why. When facing this guy, his heart would always soften. "I don't want to fight. If you keep looking at the game and keep looking at me, how are you going to fight?" Qin Mo followed the strength of her hand and sat down, his breath hitting her face. His eyes were half black, as though he was saying, "This idiot." Once the Almighty sat beside her, she didn't get distracted. This game had to be watched by him, otherwise, she wouldn't be able to get over the hurdle in her heart. Chapter 13-15. Quan didn't know that the Qin fan he was about to cripple was actually Spade Z. While doing the live stream, he said, "At this level, I'll just continue to play the game character. I can win anytime I want." Quan's words made many Qin fans feel disgusted, as though they had swallowed a fly. But they couldn't speak. The Asian Cup was about to begin, they couldn't just charge in and tear him apart because that would only increase his popularity. As a fan, what he was most worried about was the person who was about to fight against Hound. They hoped to help Almighty Qin vent his anger and teach him a good lesson. But the difference in their levels was too huge. Would he be alright? Just as the fans were thinking about it, the game had begun. They also noticed that both sides had chosen the same character. Almighty Qin's best hero. Quan sneered. "He's overestimating himself. After I use the blue buff, I'll send him back to the spring." Quan's speed wasn't bad, his moves were copied from Almighty Qin's previous videos. With a skill, he teleported to the jungle, starting from the blue buff. The more the fans watched, the more flustered they became. They had chosen Quan's perspective, and when they saw his maneuvering, their hearts sank. But right at this moment, a white figure darted in like the wind. First, he used a jungling skill to take away the blue buff, followed by a movement, the damage landing on Quan. He used a lightning strike to slow him down, his long sword sweeping across, not intending to leave after stealing the beasts. This person. He isn't just trying to steal the beasts. Steal the beasts? Bojo pressed the tip of her tongue against her chin, a smile on her face, but Coco couldn't sense any warmth from her. Her right hand held onto the mouse, her left hand moving so quickly that it was hard to see. On the screen, the figure in the white robe didn't retreat when he encountered the defense tower. Instead, he chased after Hound, who had low HP, and raised his long sword. He's trying to. A tower kill? Isn't it too early? Is he going to trade a life for a life? Quan hadn't expected this person to be so fierce. He turned around and cast a movement speed debuff on his opponent, intending to use a sliver of his HP to counterattack. However, that person seemed to have predicted his movements in advance. With a nimble curve, he dodged his attack and entered his body like the wind. KO. 1. Blood. Listening to the exciting sound effects, the fans watching the live broadcast all widened their eyes. Quan was so angry that he blurted out, "You can't escape either." One must know that the attack power of the defense tower was also very strong. But who knew? In the next second, the figure flashed out of the tower and returned to the blue buff. Teleport. Damn, he's so handsome. What a coquettish move. Oh my god. My maiden heart is about to explode. A certain host has been slapped in the face this time. I can't help but be impressed by that move. Quan could see the comments. He thought that he would be able to perish together, but he didn't expect such an outcome. If he couldn't even beat Qin Mo's fans, how was he going to explain himself? No, he had to think of a way. I was smoking just now. I never expected Almighty Qin's fans to be so good at sneak attacks. I have to fight properly. Quan acted as though nothing had happened, continuing to operate his character. He could see the small map of the game. In his opinion, this fan was too arrogant. He didn't leave after killing him and was still clearing the beasts in his jungle. He hadn't put up any defenses, which was why he had succeeded. This time, he only had half his HP left. He must have absorbed all his HP from the beasts, damn it. But it didn't matter. Soon, he would make him regret his actions. Quan raised his sword and headed for the figure. The fans couldn't help but shout, "Danger!" The figure, who was still killing the beasts, didn't seem to notice them as he continued to slash the beasts with his sword. Once, twice, thrice. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. They couldn't even bear to see the figure being killed. But in the next second, the entire live stream room seemed to have frozen. They watched as the figure swung his sword in a reverse grip on the third time. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. With 3 swishing sounds, the screen was filled with silver flowers. Kwon's pupils constricted and he wanted to retreat. He hadn't expected the other party to be so fast. His finances were double his. His first move was a big move. No, I can't fight. That was what Kwon was thinking. However, this game wasn't something he could stop just because he said so. He allowed him to use teleportation to return to his original position. The figure seemed to have predicted where he would land, turning around with the mouse. With a sweep of his sword, he set up an electric formation. The Kwon that was caught threw the mouse to the ground. He couldn't avoid it at all. This person was like a ghost. What the hell? The music blared once more. Anyone who knew how to play would know that it was hard for an assassin to remember after being caught twice. Kwon's eyes dimmed and he was about to speak. However, the person in front of him was one step ahead, typing. This is my almighty Chin's maneuvers. Of course, I'm still lacking compared to him. But, Mr. Kwon, compared to you who only imitated a tenth of it, Daddy is fully qualified to send you back to the spring. His words were so domineering that the entire computer room was cheering. Lin Feng was the most agitated, waving his hands. Little spade. Hammer. Hammer with all your might. Smash that bastard. Senior Lin, Team Flower Lin. Bo Jiu tilted her head. Lin Feng didn't care about the name anymore. Why? Continue hammering. Move aside, you're blocking my boyfriend's view. I'm taking revenge for him. Bo Jiu's voice was calm as she typed, her fingers long and beautiful. Lin Feng, that's right, move aside. Don't block Captain. Coco inched forward, trying to leave a good impression in front of his captain. This person isn't sensible. Chin Mo paused for a moment, his thin lips lifting as he nodded. Coco was moved. Was Captain responding to him? Sob sob sob, it wasn't easy. Lin Feng. F***ck. He couldn't stay in this team anymore. No one bothered about him except for Yun Hu, who pulled him over. The others were still focused on the screen. As a live streamer, it was impossible for Kwon not to react. Who are you calling an imposter? You just killed him twice and you're making things up. Everyone is playing the same hero and has the same skills, why would I need to imitate anyone? Bo Jiu didn't forget to reply. Whether it's an imposter or not, everyone can tell from his attire. Don't you have any idea? Also, you said I only killed you twice. Hee hee. Chapter 13-16. The entire live stream room could see the message. Of course, they found him handsome. But at the same time, most of them noticed Kwon's actions. This Kwon was purposely conversing with the other party to distract the other party's attention. Now that Kwon wasn't speaking, he had made use of the time he was busy typing to sneak over from the other side of the river, hiding in the bushes. Kwon's smile was sinister. I'll kill you every time I go out. I'll let everyone see how I'm going to slap your face. Kwon wasn't in a hurry, he was just making sure. He waited for the person to stop, for the time when there was nothing left to hit. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. He hit the soldier 3 times, and then suddenly rushed up. He wasn't slow. A big move landed on Bo Jiu. In the blink of an eye, Bo Jiu was left with less than a third of her HP. F***ck, isn't he shameless? Lin Feng was an experienced gamer, with just one look, he could tell what he was up to. Little Spade had just finished typing and he was already charging forward. It was obviously a dirty move. Everyone assumed the person was going to die. They couldn't see the youngster in front of the computer moving her right hand swiftly, back and forth, drawing a letter on the mouse pad. Z. But it was precisely this kind of movement that allowed her in-game character to perfectly evade all of the opponent's attacks. Kwon was taken aback by the back-and-forth movement. He had wanted to predict his opponent's movements, but now, he couldn't. Unexpectedly, the person seemed to be escaping. Escaping? That would be easy. Quan chuckled as he charged forward once more, about to catch up. Unexpectedly, the person dodged to the left, entering the defense tower. He was already at a sliver of HP, how could Quan allow him to escape? He had to take this HP. What he didn't expect was that the moment he entered the pagoda, the figure raised his sword, turned around, and enlarged himself. F***CK. That was Quan's first reaction. He dragged the mouse and retreated hurriedly. He had expected to reach the end. But, the defense tower. He still had to endure the damage from the defense tower. He could escape, he would definitely be able to escape. He had been so focused on escaping that he had forgotten about his movement skill. The defense tower and the little soldier's damage reached its target. Quan fell to the ground. The game music played once more. KO. The third time. This was already the third time. The fans watching the live broadcast were so excited that they wished they could run a few laps. But do you think this is the end? No. Because the silver-haired youth sitting in front of the computer leisurely typed a line of words. Do you find this scene very familiar? Familiar? How is he familiar? The fans were confused. But this didn't stop the smart ones from immediately grasping the main point of this sentence. Go. It was the same scene when he fought with Almighty Qin. Ah. I remember now. The last one, the last one. What do you mean by the previous round? Before anyone could explain, someone else said, if you didn't have the support to heal you in the last round, the one who died wouldn't have been my Almighty Qin, but you. Wow. It's really because of the last round. Wait a minute, does this mean that this person purposely let his HP drop to critical levels and then lure a certain streamer into the defense tower just to recreate that scene and help Almighty Qin vent his anger? Chapter 13-17. A normal professional player wouldn't be able to do it, but if it's that person. It's possible. Fans who often watched the league knew who that person was talking about. Among the junglers on the national server, other than Almighty Qin, there was only one person who could achieve such an effect. The FC King of Zone C, Spade Z. Although that person hadn't appeared for a long time. But the players still remembered the first time they saw that person. That was how she was, using a lower-level account to kill a higher-level opponent. Every round, she would bring the team to victory. Even now, it was still the same. Cough, what should we do? The CP fans are imagining things again. This isn't about the CP fans, right? This is obviously the girlfriend taking revenge for her boyfriend. I'm guessing someone is definitely trying to make Almighty Qin happy. Look up at the sky, this display of affection is really admirable. Wait a minute, look at that person's ID, little sweetheart Qin is mine. I seem to have found out about a huge secret. My boyfriend saw you acting coquettishly just now and he's beside me now. He's jealous and I have to think of a way to make him happy. So Almighty Qin is sitting beside someone. The above commenter is the truth. Aya, as a boyfriend, he doesn't waste any words, he's going to catch him in the jungle. At this moment, Bojio saw the conversation on the public chat. Her fingers paused and she turned towards the Almighty seriously. Brother Mo, the whole world knows that I like you. When he raised his hand, he was still smiling. His hand landed on the youngster's furry head, feeling the warmth of his palm. He actually felt happy. Bojio took the chance to flirt. Look, I told you I wasn't lying to you, yet you're always on guard against me. In the past, you always wanted to marry me, when are you going to fulfill that promise? Don't keep dragging me. Don't you know that chasing a girl can't be dragged out? Lin Feng and Coco were the closest to the two of them. When they heard the young man's casual words, their eyes widened like lanterns hanging outside. They looked at each other, their expressions and actions expressing the same meaning. F***CK, little Spade really did everything to get Captain's love. How could he say such shameless words? Lin Feng was the first to react. He turned to Bo Jiao and cupped his fists. He was impressed. Bo Jiao waved her hand calmly, smiling mischievously as a reply. It wasn't a big deal. I really can't compare. I can't compare. Lin Feng clutched his chest as if he had suffered a heavy blow. I finally know why I haven't been able to find a girlfriend for so many years. It's all because I'm too thin-skinned. I can't even compare to a girl. As he said this, someone responded to him. You still want to find a girlfriend? It was Yun Hu. He looked at him, a hint of coldness in his ink-black eyes. Lin Feng felt his scalp go numb from being stared at. He coughed lightly and said casually, I'm just giving an example. Chapter 13:18. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. Then he seemed to have recalled something, his fingers turning cold and flustered. He shifted his gaze. F***ck, don't joke around. Yun Hu's eyes dimmed. He didn't say anything but his expression didn't change. Qin Mo tapped the youngster's cheek. What do you think will happen if you drag this on? Like me being sad or something, Bo Jiao replied. Qin Mo arched a brow. I made you sad. Bo Jiao took a moment, feeling troubled. She hadn't. But before she could reply, the Almighty added. The Almighty added, even if you're sad, I can comfort you. MMH? Bo Jiao heard it. Even though it was faint and slightly arrogant, she wanted to hear it again. The Almighty was comforting her. Qin Mo watched his clear eyes. Just as he was about to speak, a cold sneer came from the live stream. I was wondering who it was. So it's that androgynous person who disguised himself as a man in order to attract fans. Now, he's here to cause trouble for me. What's the point? No one wants to see you in the competition. Supreme Alliance too, they have so many almighties but instead, they have a troublemaker by their side. The pft caused Qin Mo's gaze to turn cold. Lin Feng was the first to react. F***ck, this person is asking for a beating. This time, Bo Jiao remained silent. Qin Mo tilted, his right hand reaching over to snatch the keyboard in front of her. Brother Mo? Bo Jiao tilted her head. That person's slender and good-looking fingers typed a string of words on the screen. Now let this boyfriend of mine fight you. You shouldn't be afraid. After all, you just killed me last time. That sentence caused a commotion in the live stream room. Boyfriend of this account? Boyfriend of this account. Almighty Qin. Ah, my Almighty Qin. What's going on? Almighty Qin is going up. Even though I'm happy that Almighty Qin is going up, he isn't in a good state. The previous round, Quan glanced at the bullet screen before glancing down at the bottom of the screen. His lips curved into a mocking smile. Against the FC King, he might be caught and beaten up. But against Qin Mo, who wasn't in the same state as before, he was very confident. Almighty Qin is here. It seems like the rumors are true. Almighty Qin is willing to sacrifice Supreme Alliance's reputation for Spade Z. Since the Almighty is so passionate, I have no choice but to accept your challenge. Let's not fight for mana anymore. Let's fight in the middle lane. What do you think? Soon, the other side replied with one word. Clean and efficient. Alright. Coco looked at the word, good, and couldn't help but worry. Lin Feng felt the same way. These fans might not know. The captain wasn't in a bad state. Instead, he had lost all memories of the game. If you look at him from the perspective of a rookie, he had only played the game for 2 days. 2 days, was it really possible? A 1v1 like this? Coco wanted to move but Rao Rong, who was standing beside him, pressed him down and said in a low voice, look again. For the last time. If he was serious, what would he be like? Chapter 13:19. On the screen, Qin Mo's character had already skimmed out of the spring. Quan was on the opposite side. In order not to disturb the Almighty, Bojio wanted to stand up. She didn't expect that the man would empty a hand and hold her down. His voice was very calm. Watch. MMH? Watch him take revenge for her. Bojio stilled. She supported her chin with one hand, lifting her thin lips lazily. After the words, "this number's boyfriend," warmth filled her heart. The fans watching the live stream noticed Quan's foul once again. He had said he wouldn't use the blue buff, but he didn't head straight for the middle lane. Instead, he used a blue buff in his own jungle before turning and charging towards Qin Mo. Everyone saw the figure. It was coming from the blue buff's side, and it even had an ultimate move. They watched as the damage was about to land on the Almighty. Unexpectedly, at this moment, the figure was faster than him. With a movement technique, he retreated to the bottom of the tower with his long sword. Missed. It was obvious that Quan had missed his big move. He couldn't accept it, mocking the beasts by the grass. Almighty Qin. Why did you retreat to the bottom of the tower? How are you going to fight if you don't come out? Don't tell me he's scared. The moment he finished his sentence, a silver light flashed across the screen. Everyone watched as a silver light flashed across the screen. In the blink of an eye, it had landed on Hound's body. The electric circle had taken away a quarter of Hound's health. Ha, you want to kill me in your current state? After Quan was slowed down, he flipped his hand and gave Qin Mo another big move, his tone smug. You fell for it, old man. This time, the damage was very high. Almost all the sword lights hit Qin Mo's body. Lin Feng clenched his fists, wishing he could join the fight himself. Coco pinched the fluffy bunny in his arms. The fans watching the match did not dare to look at this scene. After all, it wasn't possible for the Almighty to do such a thing. When had he ever been suppressed by someone? Everyone still remembered that even if his hand was injured, as long as he picked up the assassin, he would be able to fight 1 against 3 in the later stages. But now, he had made an obvious mistake in such a simple judgment. That's it. End your esports career. It's time to give the opportunity to us newbies who haven't been able to stand out. Quan laughed sinisterly as he raised his sword and was about to chase after the white figure in front of him and kill him. Everyone thought that Almighty Qin was dead for sure. But at this moment, the people who were watching from the dog's point of view only felt that the person in front of them had disappeared in an instant. Just like Quan, they were all stunned. In the next second, he remembered that it was a teleportation skill. Almighty Qin was behind him. Quan's movements were quick. You want to lie to me? Dream on. The moment he turned, he wanted to give Qin Mo a fatal blow. Let's see what you can do this time. But just as his long sword was about to fall, the figure in front of him was 1 step ahead of him, moving towards the bushes. Then, with a backhand, he raised his sword and enlarged it. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The silver-white sword light seemed to be singing an idyllic song as it revolved around him. Quan's eyes narrowed. His fingers involuntarily pinched the mouse in his right hand. When did he use such a powerful skill? When he had returned to the tower to clear the troops. Which meant that Qin Mo hadn't returned to the tower to hide, but to wait for the skill. Attack? Chapter 13:20. They were clearly separated by a screen. However, the moment the silver light rose, Quan actually felt his entire right hand aching. He thought of retreating, or perhaps moving forward. It was that 1 second of hesitation. The game's music started playing. K.O. Quan watched as his character fell to the ground, covered in blood. In the end, he didn't even have the chance to turn the situation around. Beside the bushes, that person held a sword in his right hand. He stood tall and straight, his white robes fluttering in the wind. His side profile was handsome, and the silver light on the screen seemed to be reduced to his background. Not to mention the comments that flooded the public chat. Counterattack with low HP. This was a true counterattack at critical health. Holy sh*t. It's so cool. Almighty Qin isn't fighting, he's showing off his skills. He's showing off to the point that his opponent has nothing left to live for. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Quiet, quiet. Almighty Qin doesn't want to fight a certain streamer head-on. Tell me, how should we fight? If he fights, he'll definitely return to the spring. As a professional player, I can't let ordinary players feel that this game is too bad, or else my popularity will drop. Be serious. I'm going to have a nosebleed from watching this. Is this even possible? Countless screams and screams quickly swept across the public chat. There was only one message that was displayed at the bottom right corner. That was Qin Mo's message. I'll kill you every time you come out. If you can't, it's my loss as your boyfriend. That was all. He was practically announcing it to everyone. I'm punching you, not because you provoked me, but because you provoked my girlfriend. If the hound hadn't come out before. He had no face at all now. Counterattack with low HP. This was as good as telling him just how big of a gap there was between the two of them, even though they were playing the same game. 4 times. He had already died 4 times. That number was like a slap to his face. But this time, he wasn't playing quietly. He was doing a live broadcast, so he couldn't surrender. But if they didn't surrender and let him out, he would only die more. In the end, the figure blocked the spring just to kill him. Quan was clear that after losing so much face, there was a high chance that no one would watch his live stream again. The popularity he gained from winning against Qin Mo. Everything was gone. He couldn't accept this. This was too unreconciled. He even felt wronged. He was also afraid of being recognized. When the crystal finally broke, he immediately logged out of the game. He didn't even complete the host's requirement of broadcasting for 2 hours a day. After he stood up, he threw a huge tantrum. Just when he thought that was it. A stranger in QQ said to him, "Are you willing to lose just like that?" Of course not. The hound did not want to go back at first. But when he saw the next sentence, his thoughts changed. I can help you. I know everything about Qin Mo, and you're right. He isn't as strong as before, but it's not because of his hand injury. If you're interested, reply me and we can have a good chat. It was as if the gods and ghosts were at work. Although he did not know who the other party was. Quan sat back down and hesitated for a moment before typing, "What do you want to talk about?" Chapter 13:21. The man's words pierced through Quan's last shred of shame. This made him pound the keyboard loudly. What is your purpose? Are you here to help me or to mock me? The stranger typed again, "Young man, don't be anxious. I'm saying this to tell you that you can't react like this. The people on the internet just need to pretend to be wronged. No matter what you've done, they'll forgive you. Besides, you only took a few things from someone else. What's the big deal? If you pretend to be pitiful during the broadcast and apologize, some people will naturally forgive you. Some people might even think that the pro players are suppressing you. After all, in my eyes, those methods just now were too flashy. Think about it carefully. Isn't what I said right?" At this point, Quan found a balance in his heart. Isn't he suppressing the newbie? That person is afraid of others surpassing him. What almighty? He's probably crippled now. Wait a minute, you said that the problem with his strength wasn't because of his injuries, but something else? What's the reason? If I'm not wrong, he has amnesia. He has forgotten everything, including the attributes of his character. Do you think the committee would be willing to let such a player represent China in the Asian Cup? Even if he used to be the most valuable almighty in the market, this competition isn't about business, it's about who is the safest. Amnesia? Qin Mo had amnesia. Quan's first reaction was disbelief. He continued to read the message, reading it over and over again. In the end, his eyes dimmed and he stared at it for a long time. On the other end of the computer was the person. She didn't even dare to reveal her face, afraid that the system would recognize her. She had rented a house and hadn't stepped out since she came to Jiang City. She knew that the moment she revealed herself, she would be in danger of being caught. She didn't know why the special forces were chasing after her relentlessly. If not, she wouldn't have to hide in a corner. But soon, she wouldn't have to live in such a sullen state. She had always known that the information she had could bring that person to her side. She had even triggered him mentally. Why would he waste his time on gaming? Right now, he should be on their side. She didn't have to think to know that the moment he saw them. Murderous intent surged in his heart. He was such an outstanding person. He should rebuild their organization with her. If he had been the hypnotist, Fan Jia believed that no matter how skilled he was, he wouldn't have been able to solve his crimes. Soon, she would get that man back. Firstly, he must not participate in the Asian Cup. As for his team members, they could no longer come into contact with him. If this news was released, it would definitely cause some disintegration, no matter which side it was. Fan Jia had seen the Qin Group's PR, it was indeed good. But how could they do PR for such a thing? She had wanted to send this message the moment she arrived in Jiang City. But Fan Jia knew that someone had to follow up on this. She couldn't just expose herself like this. Now, there was such a person. Chapter 1322. No one in the engine room knew what they were about to face. It was the most basic kind of courage. Seeing Qin Mo smash into pieces, his heart was filled with joy. Bo Jiu was happy too. After all, the Almighty had admitted to the entire server that he was her boyfriend. He had even admitted it 3 times. Rao Rong stood there, deep in thought. How did you get your maneuvers? Wasn't it just a casual game? Qin Mo asked casually, his brows arched. Casual game? Rao Rong paused, breaking into a smile. You are really, sometimes, he had to acknowledge the existence of a genius. Then why didn't you make any predictions during the previous match? Qin Mo glanced up, looking lazy. I haven't seen that character. It happened in an instant. Everyone in the engine room stilled, turning to ask, Captain didn't play the game after you came back? That wasn't possible, wasn't there a video online about little Secretary Qin being my wife? He played the opening, I played the rest while he watched from the side. But I didn't have any controls in the 2 matches I played yesterday. That was why Captain hadn't predicted his opponent's skills. That was because he only knew a few characters in the game. In other words, as long as he familiarized himself with all the characters, he would be able to regain his previous abilities. Of course, there was also his familiarity with the keyboard and mouse. The latter wasn't the most important. Because in that match just now, they had discovered something. Even though he had lost his memory, Captain's body still remembered, instinctively executing the most precise maneuvers. This wasn't related to intelligence. It had been 3 years. He had been training every single day for the past 3 years. While everyone said he was talented, they couldn't see the calluses between his slender fingers and the lack of rest in his neck. They were afraid of falling sick in their line of work. They didn't dare to get sick. Especially when it was time for the competition, they were afraid it would affect their condition. He smoked more fiercely than the average person. Perhaps it was because of these sacrifices that others couldn't see that he had walked out and become the carry that every boy liked, the strongest jungler in the entire game. With such a past. In that instant, he didn't have to be afraid of anything. Now, he just needed time. Lin Feng was the most excited. Let's start today. Let Captain use all the game characters once. As long as we have enough time for Captain to familiarize himself with these characters, we will be able to participate in the Asian Cup the day after tomorrow. 2 days. No, to be precise. It should be less than 2 days. 36 hours. Excluding the time for eating and sleeping, there were only 24 hours left. He had 24 hours to familiarize himself with all the characters in the game, and he clearly knew what methods to use to evade, the recovery time of the opponent's skills, the damage dealt, and the skills used. It was too difficult. It was too difficult. But if it was the captain, there was still hope. At that moment, everyone turned around and looked at Chin Mo. The light in their eyes was so bright that it was almost shocking. But soon, she saw that handsome and indifferent side profile. Their hearts skipped a beat again. Would the captain agree? Chapter 13:23. Captain. Captain. Coco and Lin Feng spoke at the same time. But none of them were as direct as Rao Rong. Do you still want to come back and continue the competition? Chin Mo glanced at him. There wasn't the slightest hint of joy or anger in his gaze, just a slight indifference. In the end, Rao Rong was defeated. What exactly did he mean? Chin Mo stood up, one hand in his pocket as he shifted his gaze away, seemingly searching for something. In the end, his gaze landed on Lin Feng. When everyone saw Lin Feng being stared at like this, they quickly shifted their gazes. Lin Feng, who was the center of attention, felt his scalp go numb. The pressure from his captain's gaze was immense. That. He cleared his throat, about to speak when Chin Mo's voice came over. I don't remember anything now. If I don't drag you down, I can join your competition. But as a condition, I'm curious about one thing. Chin Mo's voice drifted over, sounding lazy and black-bellied. I don't remember anything now. What is it? Lin Feng was a little frightened. Why did the captain look at him when he was curious? It couldn't be that he saw him in a different light, right? That was this person. Before Lin Feng could think of anything else, Chin Mo had already raised his left hand, tapping the top of Bo Jiu's head. She has always been telling me that we are dating, that I was the one who chased her and that she was the one who insisted on marrying me. I really want to hear the real story. In an instant, Lin Feng had reached their captain's point. Speaking of which, Captain, I've tolerated Little Spade for a long time. Lin Feng rolled up his sleeves, his face full of indignation. Really, how could she say that you liked her so much that you wanted to marry her? Even though you really liked her, everyone knows that it was Little Spade who chased after you. The first time she saw you, she said that she wanted to provide for you. But to be honest, the Fu family's money isn't enough to provide for Captain. Besides, no one knew she was a girl at that time and she would confess to any handsome guy she saw. I don't know what kind of person she is. Bo Jiu. She finally understood how it felt to have a useless teammate. Team Flower Lin, you don't have to say the last sentence, okay? Confessing to every handsome guy you see. As expected, Chin Mo smiled. His beautiful peach blossom eyes slowly narrowed. Looks? Lin Feng nodded. They're very particular about looks. Is that so? Everyone present could hear the slight coldness in his voice. Even the uncle, Yin Wuyao, felt that after today, little Captain's path in love would not be easy. And then? Chin Mo's nonchalant voice rang out again. Bo Jiu took the chance to pinch him. Lin Feng's expression instantly turned solemn, cursing in his heart. He appropriately kept away some of Little Spade's dark history and started to pick the nicer parts. Then, she seemed to have changed into a different person, rejecting you in the game. The few of us discussed this topic in detail, it must have been her ploy back then, loosening the reins only to grasp them better. She wanted Captain to notice her, after all, in the game, no one would ever reject Captain. Chapter 13:24. It's a trap. Coco added. Captain, you might not know, but she was still typing on the internet. After flirting with us, she invited us to meet up. She knew exactly what you were thinking. It was all an act. Honestly, if a girl chased me like that, I would just give in. Chin Mo was good at catching the main point. Chin Mo was good at catching the main point. So, she was indeed the one who chased me. Of course. How could someone like their captain chase someone? Even if he was interested in Little Spade, he would lure her to chase him. But, Captain, Flower Lin said that you really like Little Spade. No, you like her very much. You might not know, but when we saw you interacting with someone on your official Weibo, we were all stunned. We tagged you so many times, but you never replied. At this point, Coco's eyes turned bitter again. But at this moment, Chin Mo wasn't concerned about it anymore. Instead, he was concerned about what Lin Feng had said. Lin Feng noticed that his captain was looking at him again, so he immediately asked, "Captain, can we continue playing now?" Wait. Chin Mo tilted his head, reaching out to grab a certain someone who was about to sit down. He didn't look at her. Instead, he said to everyone present, "We need some private time." After saying that, he took the man away. In the computer room, the Supreme Alliance members looked at each other, then their gazes landed on Lin Feng again. Lin Feng had received too much attention that day. The naive and innocent him didn't understand, so he scratched the back of his head. "Why are you all looking at me like that?" "Nothing." He looked up at the sky. In the future, when they got a girlfriend, they had to control Flower Lin's mouth. She was such a troublemaker. Grandfather Butler watched from the side, his fingers supporting his forehead, shaking his head helplessly. His movements were elegant. As a qualified butler, how could he not entertain the guests when the owner wasn't around? Hence, just when everyone wanted to sneak a peek at what their captain wanted to discuss with Little Spade, Grandfather Butler brought a tray full of desserts to the computer room. Grandfather Butler dutifully brought the tray full of tea and desserts to the computer room. He smiled and blocked everyone's way. "I think you need some dessert now." Yin Wuliao really wasn't interested in tea and desserts. Coco's eyes lit up when he saw the snacks. He stuffed a handful into his mouth and held Yin Wuliao's hand. "Uncle, you have to try this. It's really good." Before Yin Wuliao could speak, Lin Feng, who was standing at the side, leaned over. "Damn, this is too delicious. Hu Zi, come and eat." Yun Hu and Yin Wuliao, after a few refreshments, the two of them forgot that there was a better show to watch. Sure enough, the characteristics of pig-headed teammates were the same. After being bribed, they would still help the person pay. Grandpa Butler smiled like a gentleman. Sometimes, protecting the young master's face was what a qualified butler had to do. However, this matter was a little strange to Grandpa Butler. After all, he never had to worry about the young master. Now, it seemed that someone was going to dig up old scores. Grandpa Butler raised his hand and glanced at the silver pocket watch. "And, it's time to prepare dinner again. I wonder what young master will say this time. Sigh, I've chased after many people." Chapter 1325. Bojiu, who was brought to the room by the Almighty, knew it clearly. The Almighty was going to settle the score with her. Lin Huahua's stupid teammate had caused her so much trouble. Instead of being passive, she decided to strike first. That had always been Bojiu's style. Hence, the moment she reached the room, she spoke with a sincere expression, "I can explain." "Oh." Chin Mo glanced at her, his fingers twirling the poker cards. When he heard her words, he tossed the poker cards onto the coffee table and leaned back unhurriedly. Bojiu smiled. "Look, I'm a girl, right? MMH?" Chin Mo arched a brow, his entire attitude telling her to start her performance. Bojiu felt that his attitude wasn't respectful. She reached out and cupped his face before continuing, "Ever since I was young, Grandfather Butler taught me that as a lady, I have to be reserved." Chin Mo laughed when he heard that. "What are you laughing at?" Bojiu arched a brow. Chin Mo moved her hand away, his voice slow. "You really are a failed example of education." Bojiu smiled nonchalantly. "As a lady, I have to keep up appearances, right?" It wasn't easy for you to forget my dark history. I'll definitely say that you chased me. There's nothing wrong with that, Brother Mo, you seem rather happy that I lost my memory. Chin Mo flicked her hand away. Go over. Bojo. Seriously, he wasn't even allowing her to take advantage of him. It seems like my sugar daddy doesn't know how to grasp the main point. Chin Mo chuckled, the corners of his lips lifting. Let me rephrase my question, is it your hobby to confess whenever you see a good-looking person? Bojo immediately denied. Of course not, it's a misunderstanding. Is that so? Why don't we have a chat? How many times have you confessed to me? Chin Mo's chuckle was especially dangerous. Bojo glanced up. The first and the only one. Chin Mo watched her bright black and white eyes, they were so clear that only his face could be seen. He hadn't expected such an answer. After all, those words of ridicule just now didn't seem to be made up. Bojo pursed her lips. Honestly, Brother Mo, you're so good-looking. Other than you, who else do I need to confess to? Ha, this sentence was meant to coax him again. But at this moment, Chin Mo tilted his head, the smile at the corner of his mouth clearly visible. It could be seen that he really fell for it. Bojo didn't notice his smile and continued, have you forgotten how hard it was to woo you? When I first met you, you were like a doll. Because you were so beautiful, I couldn't bear to raise my voice at you. You don't know how fierce I was when I was young, but I was gentle to you. It's a pity that you didn't appreciate it and always complained that I was dirty. You would wash my hands for me before meals, after meals and even before bed, as though I was a troublesome person. But as the saying goes, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Even then, I still found you adorable. Otherwise, why would I treat you as a girl? Of course, Bojo would never say that out loud. At the time, I realized my feelings. I shyly hugged my piggy bank and went to you to confess to you. Bojo pursed her lips. But it didn't end up as I wished. Chin Mo swept her a glance. Shyness? Are you sure that's an appropriate adjective for you to use? He couldn't imagine that such a tender scene could have been done by this person. At that time, I was still very innocent. I really wanted to buy you, but unfortunately, you were too expensive. Chin Mo arched a brow. Is that so? My innocent sugar daddy fell in love with me at first sight when I was young? I was 3.5 then. Bojo took the chance to hold his hand. Do you understand the feeling of being electrocuted? Chin Mo allowed her to hold his hand without a change in expression. He lifted his lips in amusement. I don't understand how a 3.5-year-old could experience the feeling of being electrocuted. She was really good at bullshitting, talking about being electrocuted. Bojo's face sank. That's right, I didn't understand it back then, but now that I think about it, I liked you too much. With that, Chin Mo couldn't take it anymore. He pressed her onto the sofa, looking down at her from above. His handsome face tilted over, his breath landing on her ears. Let's end the nonsense here. As for Sugar Daddy's private life, I only have one request. Since you chose me, you must always choose me, understand? If Sugar Daddy is too fickle, I'm not sure what I'll do. Bojo wanted to speak, but his kiss messed up her breathing. It wasn't just a kiss, his hand had already reached over. He had already lifted her shirt and was moving in from top to bottom. Bojo's entire body was burning. She couldn't shake off the numbness from his kiss. Her clothes and hair were messy and filled with an ambiguous sense of beauty. Her face was flushed red. The kiss by her ear gradually heated up, and even her legs felt a little weak. Because of his hands, her voice became a little choppy. We still have to play games outside, I know how to play. He leaned forward and planted a kiss on the side of her neck. But my sugar daddy, shouldn't you be more focused when I'm pleasing you, MMH? This wasn't pleasing her, it was obviously a sweet and scratching punishment. He almost rubbed her entire body, but he refused to let her. He was like a seductive demon as he whispered in her ear with a hoarse voice, "Are you going to confess to other people, hmm?" "Ben, I've never done it." The sound of clothes rubbing against each other made Bojio even more uncomfortable. She decided to take the initiative, wrapping her long legs around his waist. Then she smiled and kissed his Adam's apple. She was like a mermaid at the bottom of the sea, full of charm. "Speaking of which, Brother Mo, you're really good at enduring." Chin Mo's gaze deepened because of her actions. The person in his arms knew all too well how to crush his rationality. It wasn't wrong to say that a beauty could see through one's bones. The smooth jade-like skin in his hands. Moreover, when she spoke, the corners of her lips lifted and the bewitching dot at the end of her eyes seemed to have been purposely placed there to seduce Scholar. She seemed to be ready, waiting for someone to pluck her. Her clothes were messy, her collarbones exquisite, the curves of her breasts round and round. Her top was lifted, revealing a smooth, white skin. It was enough to ignite anyone's impulses. Moreover, such a scene was created by him, including her emotions. Chin Mo pulled his hand back, breaking into a slow smile. "Do you want to stay in bed the entire day? Don't you want the game anymore? If that's the case, you can continue seducing me." Bojio changed her position, becoming a little gangster. "What a pity, the time and place aren't suitable." "You don't have to feel pity, you can continue if you want." With that, Chin Mo leaned forward, the smile on his thin lips obvious. Bojio finally managed to get him to stop. She wasn't stupid enough to continue being punished. "It's okay, we have important matters to attend to. You have to know that I'm a considerate girlfriend." Chin Mo arched a brow, releasing her. Bojio reached out to straighten her top, pulling the Almighty to leave. The man didn't move. He tilted his head and glanced at her again, letting her drag him. He casually supported his chin with one hand and said in a hoarse voice, "Are you going to let me go like this?" What was wrong with that? At the start, Bojio didn't understand what he meant. But when she lowered her lids, her long legs touched the part that had obviously changed, her face heating up. But he was still the same, noble and abstinent, making her want to touch him. The Almighty was probably the only one who could be so seductive when he was aroused. After half a minute, that place didn't seem to be cooling down at all. Bojio maintained her previous position. "Do you need my help?" "How?" Chin Mo glanced over. Bojio said something in a low voice. Chin Mo laughed. "With my hands?" Bojio replied, her eyes beautiful. "Why? You don't like it?" She was really daring. She was always so direct that people couldn't handle her. Chin Mo watched as she was about to move, her disguise about to be removed. He pressed her hand down. "You're just adding fuel to the fire, you're going crazy." This was the first time the Almighty said such words. She stilled and was pulled into the bathroom. He turned on the cold water. He made her stand outside the frosted glass. Even so, Bojio could feel his aura fluctuating. 5 minutes. Indeed, it was faster than her helping him. When he came out, he had already changed his clothes, one hand pressed against his head, his black hair still dripping with water. He was fresh from a shower. Just like that, they left the room and walked towards the computer room. Lin Feng was still eating. When he saw the two of them, he immediately asked, "Little Spade, what are you guys talking about? What took you so long? Why did Captain take a shower?" "We're almost done with the dessert Grandfather Butler prepared." Bojio picked up the remaining blueberry dessert gracefully and stuffed it into his mouth. She smiled. "Senior Lin, you shouldn't speak today." Lin Feng widened his eyes, confused. Why didn't she allow him to speak? Bojio tilted her head and asked the Almighty, "Brother Mo, why did you ask him when there were so many others?" If she had asked someone else, her dark history wouldn't have been dug up. "Of course, it's because Captain trusts me." Lin Feng was about to puff up his chest when his captain interrupted him leisurely. However, his actions were interrupted by his captain's unhurried words, because the characteristics of a pig-like teammate are more obvious. In an instant, Lin Feng froze. Had Captain really lost his memory? Why hadn't his venomous tongue gotten better? How scary. Even after losing his memory, Captain was still so cunning. Chapter 1326. Let's begin, isn't there not much time? Qin Mo sat down, one hand supporting his chin as he nodded towards the seat beside him. Then he swept Bo Jiu a glance, his intentions clear, he wanted her to sit beside him. Bo Jiu knew, but she arched a brow. You want me to sit? Why? Do you really want to sit on my lap? Qin Mo asked as he switched on the computer, tilting his head in amusement. She wasn't as good as the Almighty in terms of language. Hence, she opened a room and chose the 1v1 mode. It was a 1v1 against the Almighty. Every time they started, she would switch to another character to fight against the Almighty. As they fought, she would introduce the moves of the character. Lin Feng was in a daze. Rao Rong watched as well, flicking the cigarette ash in his hand. No one had expected Little Spade to use such a method to get their captain to memorize the character's attributes. But it had to be said. This was the best method. It didn't just deepen the impression. More importantly, Little Spade's hand speed and awareness were rare in the esports world. With such a person as a sparring partner. This meant that as long as their captain was familiar with the moves of the character, it wouldn't be easy for an average person to defeat him. Perhaps, there really was hope. Everyone's eyes lit up when they saw Qin Mo tilting his head and moving his mouse. The other members of the team didn't slack off either. They logged into the game and started their daily hand speed training. Even Shui Yaoyao and Feng Shang, the two reserve members, didn't slack off. The air in the computer room definitely wasn't good. Boys liked to smoke while playing games, but today they were restraining themselves. They even went to the toilet less than usual. After every round, they would reach out and press the back of their necks, then lean back and wait for the next round with a cigarette in their mouth. It was just a short break and it was the time to prepare before they entered the game. It was probably because they wanted to win too much. Every esports player had a dream in their heart. They wanted to wear the national flag and stand in the center. Hence, even the sacrifice felt sweet. Because they were clear. They were never the same person. And there was their teammate beside them. Time passed little by little. The old butler, who had pushed open the door to call the guests down for dinner, paused when he saw this scene. He had never seen a room with such bad air quality in the castle or anywhere else. However, he was surprised that he felt happy. Ever since he was young, although the young master was very likable, he didn't have many friends. Having a group of people visit his home was something that had never happened before. Speaking of which, this was the first time he helped the young master entertain guests. Perhaps there was nothing wrong with a change of environment. If it wasn't a coincidence. Young master would probably never know these people. But now, he saw that because of these people, the young master's aura had finally increased. That feeling was hard to describe. When he first came into contact with the young master was still young and had no mother since birth. All her topics revolved around the pet. Later, when the owner passed away, the young master became quiet. He even talked less and less about the pet, to the point that he almost forgot about the existence of such a person. In the Fifth Avenue, the young master was wanton and mysterious. No one could catch her. Her whereabouts were uncertain and she came and went alone. She could always be seen smiling in a black motorcycle suit in the noisy nightclub. This kind of life was indeed carefree. But no one knew. When he returned to the castle, the young master hugged the small keyboard and sat on the floor of the heater drinking wine. Elegant and lonely. She liked to play an old movie, Interview with the Vampire at night. When she saw him coming, she would smile and say, "That morning, before I became a vampire, I saw the sunrise for the last time. I remember all the details, but I have forgotten all the sunrises before that." I enjoyed this spectacular view for the last time, as if it was the first time I saw it. Then I said goodbye to the sunlight and became what I am now. Grandpa Butler, me too. I said goodbye to the sunlight and became what I am now. At that time, the old butler swore to stay by this child's side for the rest of his life. It was all right now. Not only him, but more people were by her side. That was the most important thing. The corners of Grandpa Butler's lips curved slightly. He didn't disturb the group of professional gamers. She packed the dishes on the dining table in exquisite boxes and placed them in each person's hand. As a qualified butler, how could he not be able to do such a small thing? However, these children were really putting their lives on the line. When they saw the boxes, they thanked him and started to eat while entering the game. They had to play 2 rounds of games to finish a meal. It was really tough. The clock on the wall turned another 3 squares. When Yun Hu stood up and wanted to raise his hand to smoke a cigarette, the person sitting beside him tilted his body and rested his head on his left arm. It was Lin Feng. He was probably too tired from the 2 days of training and fell asleep while sitting. Yun Hu paused, holding the cigarette in his hand. He didn't light it up, using only one hand to familiarize himself with the sensitivity of the mouse. The night outside was getting darker and darker. But in this small computer room, gentleness could be seen everywhere. Shui Yao Yao fell asleep on the keyboard, Coco's down jacket draped over her body. He had intentionally lowered the brightness of the screen. Bo Jiu was still explaining the skills of the character, but her voice was clearly much softer. In such a dark night, it was like flowing sand, making one feel extra warm. But even so, Qin Mo could hear the tiredness in her voice. He tilted his head and said, "All right, you don't have to say any more. Remember to speak quickly." Bo Jiu took a sip of water to moisten her throat. Qin Mo freed a hand and lifted her chin. "Open your mouth." "MMH?" The Almighty wanted to kiss her. No, that wasn't possible. If he wanted to kiss her, she wouldn't have opened her mouth, he should have closed her eyes. However, the last time the Almighty made her close her eyes, he only told her to keep dreaming. He really didn't have a shred of humanity in him. Other people's boyfriends were meant to be sweet, but hers was probably meant to train her ability to withstand blows. "What are you thinking about?" Sure enough, a smile similar to the one before appeared on that extremely good-looking face, with a hint of playfulness. Bo Jiu was about to say that she hadn't expected him to pinch her chin for a kiss. Just then, something touched her lips. It was soft and slightly cold. It was like the lightest ice cream. Chapter 1327. Bo Jiu's fingers paused. She tilted her head and saw his face. His lashes were long and narrow. Because of his actions, it hit her face. It was so good-looking that it didn't seem real. The kiss didn't last long. Fortunately, her teammates were focused on the game and no one saw it. Actually, someone had seen it. Rao Rong had just finished a match. When he glanced up at the time, he saw the scene. But he wasn't Lin Feng. He glanced over and smiled. With a cigarette in his mouth, he continued with the second match. In the past. It was hard to imagine. Who would fall in love with the aloof and cold Qin Mo fall in love with? After all, when he had known him, he had been a youngster who only acted according to his preferences. He had been so cold that it had been a headache. He definitely didn't have much patience. He hadn't even batted an eyelash at the beautiful female casters. Regardless of how seductive they were, even if they were to stand naked in front of him, he would always have a mocking smile on his face. From the looks of it, when it came to love, he had to be gentle. Rao Rong clicked lightly, entering the next match. Bo Jiu listened to the tapping of the keyboard. She glanced down at the wet lips after he had kissed her. Her heart started to race. But the Almighty was indeed the Almighty. When he didn't speak, he was as beautiful as a fairy. The moment he opened his mouth, he would reveal his true self. Just as you said, the kiss is over. Open your mouth and let me take a look. What am I looking at? Bojo did as she was told. Judging from the Almighty's expression, if she didn't listen, he would throw her out of the window. Qin Mo looked at himself. When he saw the redness in the middle of her throat, his deep eyes narrowed slightly. As expected. Brother Mo? Bojo arched a brow. She didn't understand what he was looking at. He walked out and asked for a peppermint candy from someone. He stuffed it into her mouth and said in a lazy tone, "Say one more word and I'll quit the game." That was when Bojo realized that he was feeling heartache for her throat. She couldn't help but smile, but she couldn't make it too obvious. Otherwise, the Almighty would say that he was proud again. She sat there for a while before moving again. She leaned over and kissed his ear. Brother Mo, thank you. The candy is delicious. Qin Mo's hands paused. He forgot to deal damage and was killed by the tyrant. When he pulled himself out of that guy's aura, there was already a line of dots on the screen. Is my assassin sleepwalking? He was killed by the tyrant. An assassin can't even kill a monster. I feel like I'm going to lose again. Alright, my mentality has collapsed. How am I supposed to fight like this? Bojo, who hadn't entered the game, turned to take a look. However, Qin Mo raised his hand, blocking her from reaching over. His tone was casual. Get me a glass of water. Isn't there one here? Bojo pointed to the glass of water beside him. The number 1 jungler, who had been killed by the tyrant, replied expressionlessly, "It's cold, I want a cup of hot tea to wake me up." Alright, I'll go look for Grandfather Butler. After reviving in the spring, Qin Mo darted into the jungle once more. This time, he didn't just kill the tyrant, he had also taken away the ADC. In an instant, the situation in the game changed. His teammates who had won without doing anything were a little confused. Since his jungler was so good, why had he been killed by the tyrant? It wasn't just his teammates, even the opponents were asking the same question. Qin Mo moved his fingers, replying, "Lagged internet connection." That was why gamers had the same routine. Regardless of the situation, there would always be a perpetual excuse, lagged internet connection. But only Qin Mo knew what had happened in that instant. How could he be affected by a prey to such an extent? Qin Mo lowered his gaze, not saying a word. Next, he didn't give her a chance to speak. When he saw that she was about to explain, he stuffed a piece of candy over. Looking at the man's wavering eyes, Yizichen felt a chill run down his spine. Qin Mo sneered, she obviously wanted him to feed her the candy personally. It wasn't easy to get tired when they accompanied each other. But in the wee hours of the morning, his shoulders couldn't take it. The weather outside was getting cold. Bojo glanced up, turning to Yin Wuyao. There's a room, shall we get everyone to sleep in? Let's sleep here. Yin Wuyao flicked the ash off his cigarette. Sitting in front of the computer gives me a higher chance of winning. Everyone probably feels the same way, me too. With that, Yin Wuyao leaned back. It's good, I feel at ease. Bojo understood the feeling he was referring to, her lips curving into a slight smile. Yin Wuyao spoke again, little captain. MMH? Bojo arched a brow. Yin Wuyao knew that everyone was asleep. Those who weren't asleep couldn't hear their conversation. Continue playing, if you really can't take it, just wear female clothes, it's nothing. You can just change back. I promised I promised my mom that I wouldn't play anymore. Bojo tilted her head. Besides, Rao Rong is here, even without me, as long as the Almighty recovers, Supreme Alliance will still be able to clinch the championship. I've seen the comments online, it doesn't affect me in that aspect, but I don't want people to talk about my gender when you are trying so hard to win. That wouldn't be fair to those who are serious about the competition. Most importantly, I don't want any black marks on his almighty record. Uncle Ian, do you know? That person should stand on the altar, clean and innocent. He shouldn't be like this, where a small streamer could diss him. The moment someone appeared, they would say that he couldn't play anymore because of someone else. He would be treated as the most dangerous person there. All of this. He shouldn't have experienced it. He should have been held in her hands. Regardless of when. With that, she glanced out of the window, the lights of the entire city reflected in her eyes. No one knew. How did success come about? Perhaps, no one would care. When this group of people was tired, they would just lie down on the keyboard and close their eyes to sleep. What was the reason? They wanted to win. They wanted to win so badly. They wanted to prove themselves, their teammates, and their team. But how could she become a stumbling block at such a time? Chapter 13:28. Night fell. Some people were working hard. Some people didn't understand. In the small computer room, everyone was thinking about fighting for a glimmer of hope. A piece of news appeared on a forum. The title was very eye-catching. Can this almighty still represent China in the competition after losing his memory? Memory loss? When the netizens saw this word, they naturally clicked on it subconsciously. Then they saw the description above. The #1 jungler in the entire server, the most valuable MVP player. There are too many fans who label this almighty. As someone who likes him, I have to admit that up until now, no one has been able to surpass him in terms of operational awareness. But now that he has lost his memory, everyone has seen the previous competition. There were 5 players and he actually lost 1 life to a streamer. At first, I didn't believe such a thing would happen to him. But when I saw the video, I knew that it wasn't his operation. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't have achieved such a result. Some fans, don't be in a hurry to talk about his hand injury. His hand injury isn't something that happened in a day or two. Everyone has seen it for themselves. Even during the National League, when he faced the national champion Xiangnan, he didn't lose any of his drive. But look at his operation in this match. It's obvious that he has forgotten his previous awareness. Can he still represent our country in the competition? I know that no one is willing to see this team fall apart, but to be honest, he is really old. Now that he has lost his memory, why can't we, as his fans, think about it from a rational point of view? Is it still suitable for him to play in this match? I believe the National Organizing Committee has an answer in their hearts. After all, this concerns the reputation of our country. This post was too provocative. Whether it was the timing of the post or the topic it was leading to, it caught people off guard. Although he didn't point out who this almighty was, from the description, people could already guess the name. Qin Mo. The almighty in their hearts. In just an instant, the internet exploded. Every fan was burning with anxiety. Their almighty actually lost his memory. Was that possible? Many people were replying to the post, asking, where did you get the news? How could my almighty Qin lose his memory? In less than 10 minutes, the post became a hot topic. Too many people joined in, regardless of whether they were fans of esports or had never watched an esports competition before. The scene became out of control. The only thing that could be salvaged was that Feng Yi noticed the post immediately. After all, he was living and eating in the company to keep an eye on the PR side. It was just that he had thought too much about what would happen. She never expected that young Master Qin's amnesia would be exposed. Because only the internal members of their team knew about this news. Moreover, he had just told Lin Feng about this news. Under normal circumstances, a person like Feng Yi, who worked hard in the business world, would first suspect Lin Feng. After all, that fellow was indeed a chatterbox. But he knew about the members of Supreme Alliance. Those people might be very talkative. However, he would always think from the other party's point of view. Chapter 13:29. Moreover, it was a waste of time to think about who had leaked the secret. What he needed to do now was to salvage the situation. Feng Yi clicked on the mouse, reading the post 3 times. From the moment it was released until now, it had been problematic at every point. Firstly, it was the timing that the person had chosen. It was published in the wee hours. At this time, most of the people online were netizens. The company was basically in a state of rest. If he hadn't been mentally prepared, he wouldn't have seen this post. Secondly, if it had only been about young Master Qin's amnesia, it would have caused an uproar. But without the guidance at the back, he had other ways to deal with it. Supreme Alliance had never found excuses to evade anything. If the fans wanted to know, they could ask the officials directly. But the person who made the post didn't just want to expose young Master Qin's amnesia, the crux was the latter point. It involved the country's reputation, which would definitely make people feel that this matter had to be resolved. This wasn't a post made by a fan. A fan wouldn't do such a thing. Feng Yi frowned. He didn't expect the committee to not care about this matter. Even if they hadn't cared in the past, with the influence of the internet, the committee would have their own considerations. Feng Yi stood up. His first reaction was to use all his connections. He didn't care about the time anymore, dialing a string of numbers. Hello, Boss Li. It's like this, there's something. It was hard for anyone to imagine that there would be a day when the person known as the Smiling Fox would use such a pleading tone to talk to someone. But before he could finish, the person on the other end of the line interrupted him. Little Feng, I saw the incident with Supreme Alliance. Boss Qin's amnesia is a huge matter, how dare you hide it? It's not that I want to criticize you, but why are you getting worse and worse? It's such a huge piece of news, it's impossible for me not to expose it. I've given you enough face, so don't call me anymore. He wasn't calling Boss Feng warmly, but Little Feng. Feng Yi's fingers froze when he heard the busy tone. The little assistant had woken up as well, watching from the side. Her eyes reddened instantly. What she didn't expect was that the man standing in front of the desk didn't pause at all and made a second call. Again and again, he was rejected and even mocked. In the end, someone finally agreed to talk to the organizing committee, but it was just a casual talk. The little assistant looked at CEO Feng, who reached out to tug open his collar and felt that it was too difficult. How could he still smile when it was so difficult? Thank you, Mr. Zhang. I'll treat you to a drink later. After Feng Yi hung up, the assistant walked over and saw him light a cigarette. She called out, CEO Feng. Feng Yi acted as if he hadn't heard anything, obviously thinking about something else. The young assistant raised her voice. How did you do it? What? Like now, I can endure those things. Feng Yi paused, his thin lips curving upwards. Back when Supreme Alliance was first established, we encountered a lot of such incidents. We are an esports company that deals with the internet. Back then, no one admitted that Supreme Alliance could become popular. We only relied on young Master Qin's face to pull in many resources. Compared to then, things are better now. You call this better? The little assistant didn't understand. Feng Yi chuckled. Of course it's better. Now, we are a team that won't embarrass anyone on the battlefield. It's been 3 years and we still have the fans that have been following Supreme Alliance for 3 years. But those fans... The little assistant was agitated. If it wasn't for them online, before the little assistant could finish, Feng Yi interrupted her. Don't you misunderstand the word fans? Of course, those troublemakers aren't fans. The fans I'm talking about are the people who are still waiting for young Master Qin and Little Spade to come back. They have feelings. Feelings are a mysterious thing, but everyone will think about it in the dead of night. There is a group of people who, even if they are scarred, broken, and no longer perfect, they will still be able to see them. But what they want to see the most is this group of people, a team that doesn't have a single member. The little assistant was almost disheartened after reading so many replies. Do such fans exist? Yes. Feng Yi glanced back, his eyes bright. There is one thing you have to believe, the type of team Supreme Alliance leaves behind depends on the type of people. The little assistant froze. Everyone said he was a cunning businessman. But once a businessman had feelings, he was even more eye-catching than an ordinary person. Feng Yi didn't dwell on this question for long. He lifted his wrist. It's 1 a.m. now. Make some preparations, one of the team members will be chosen for an interview tomorrow. It's best for the members of Supreme Alliance to talk about it. I'm heading over to the committee. Boss Feng, aren't you going to delete the post? The little assistant was shocked since it was posted on their official account. Feng Yi glanced up. There's no use. The little assistant froze. This was the first time she heard the word, no use, from a man's mouth. The sky outside was dark. It was so dark that there seemed to be no light. It was 1:30 am. Quan sat in front of the computer, typing a string of words. The words you taught me are indeed impressive. The internet is in a mess. Even if the Almighty has a strong background, he will have to leave this time. Don't be anxious, this is just the first step. The person replied quickly. Quan was shocked. Just the first step. That's right, I'll teach you the second step. Quan's eyes lit up when he saw the message. He glanced at the status displayed on the screen, eager to give it a try. In the computer room of the apartment, Yunhu saw his phone ringing. After muting the sound, he walked out to take the call. The next moment, his eyes widened and his voice deepened. I understand, I'll tell them. Them? Some fell asleep from exhaustion while Captain is still familiarizing himself with the controls. They are all doing well. I won't reply this time, I'm just going to check on the situation. After hanging up, Yunhu pushed the door open and walked back. He glanced at Bojio before shaking everyone awake. There's news from old Fox Feng. Captain's amnesia has been exposed and the internet is in a mess. We need to understand the situation so that we can be mentally prepared when the media asks about it. Lin Feng, who had been yawning, woke up instantly. Almost everyone had the same reaction. Unease, extreme unease. Because everyone knew this wasn't a small matter. Other than the main character, Qin Mo, his expression remained the same. There weren't many fluctuations in his emotions, but he turned to glance at the person beside him. His fingers seemed to have paused. Qin Mo's gaze deepened, but he didn't say a word. Lin Feng was the first to open the page to search for the news. Actually, there wasn't a need to search. It had already become a hot topic on the official website. The moment he opened it, he could see it. The number of replies had already exceeded 10,000 and was still rising. The team members crowded over. When they saw the content, they were so angry they wanted to smash the keyboard. Did they understand? They wanted to get together and play another game. Even if it was just one match. They just wanted to do their best in this match. Even their captain, who had amnesia, had sat in front of the computer for 10 hours just to memorize the skills of the characters. What was the point? Did they understand? But it wasn't just one post. Other than this post, there was another one that was slowly becoming popular, and it seemed like it couldn't be stopped. It was in the tone of a fan. Such a big thing happened. As an old fan of Supreme Alliance, I want to know who the person who leaked the news is. This kind of thing should only be known within the team. They even said that they are as close as a family. Ever since Spadesy joined, there hasn't been any peace. Who was the first to know about this and say it out loud? I think we should look for it. This type of post was obviously to stir up momentum. But there were fans who couldn't understand and really replied below. Other than Spadesy, the one who replied the most was Lin Feng. The reason they gave was simple. After all, he was a chatterbox and definitely didn't tell anyone easily. In the end, it was exposed by his fans. After Lin Feng saw the replies, his first reaction was to look at the expressions of his team members. No matter how fast my mouth is, I wouldn't say such things so casually, before he could finish. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. Coco, who hadn't said a word, lifted the keyboard. I've had enough. The more good-tempered and cute a person was, the more heart-wrenching it was when he was angry. Coco stood up, as though he was going to use all his strength to smash everything in the computer room. Gaming, why do we have to play games? What kind of lousy profession is this? How many people do we have to interact with? These likes, are these F***king likes? Anyone who knows what it means to like someone wouldn't be like this. I've had enough of such likes. I'm almost out of breath. Quit the industry, F***king Asian Cup, whoever wants to play can play, I'll touch this thing again, Chapter 1330. Coco was very touched to hear such comforting words. But just as he was about to hug little Spade back, he glanced up and saw his captain's smile. The meaning behind that smile was simple. If you dare to hug me back, I'll break your paws. Coco was shocked. Little Spade, you can console me, but why are you hugging me? Do you want Captain to tear me apart? With that, Coco stopped and calmed himself down. As expected, compared to the internet attacks, he was more afraid of Captain's gaze. Bo-Jio felt hurt. Shouldn't little Sissy be extremely touched at this moment? Why was he so afraid? Bo-Jio was still raising her brows. The atmosphere in the team had changed completely. Everyone knew why Coco had such a reaction. They were all suppressing their laughter. Lin Feng let out a long breath and said, "Deal with it." Yes, since it happened, they had to solve it. This was their usual style. They would deal with it when they couldn't solve it. Besides, they believed Feng Yi was already in the process. As for the process, they would have to wait until dawn. From 3 a.m. to 8 a.m., this was the most difficult time. Bo-Jio suggested, go and rest, put aside the training. Especially at this time, you have to be more alert in front of the media. I'm guessing old Fox Feng has some plans. Why don't we wait for his call? Sure. Yin Wuyao was the first to stand up. He reached out and massaged the back of his neck. It's important to relax before the match. If you can't sleep, you can play cards. It's fine to play cards. Feng Shang blushed. I am good at cards. Bo-Jio laughed. Then let's play cards. I'll be in the same group as Brother Mo. Qin Mo arched a brow. Are you sure I know how to play? Brother Mo, don't worry. Even if you lost your memory, no one is better than you when it comes to scheming. Bo-Jio lowered her voice. Qin Mo smiled. Is that a compliment? Of course. Bo-Jio adjusted her collar. I'll help you draw the cards later. I won't brag about anything else, but my luck is really good. 10 minutes later. Qin Mo glanced at the cards that a certain someone had drawn and arched a brow. Is this what you meant by having good luck? Bo-Jio, who had drawn 3 useless tiles in a row, was frustrated. Why wasn't this mahjong giving her any face? Brother Mo, actually, this isn't a big deal. If you touch more, you can hit 13 youngsters. Bo-Jio tried to clear her name. Qin Mo scoffed, replying slowly, by the time you're done with the 13, the others will have already won. Bo-Jio. Why did he have to say something that everyone knew? Brother Mo, didn't you say you don't know how to play? Qin Mo arched a brow and glanced at the cards on the table lazily. His voice was faint. It's such a simple game. You can learn it after one round. With that, he held onto her wrist with one hand and reached out with the other. He picked up a card and pushed it forward. Pick yourself, all colors. Everyone was stunned. Lin Feng felt even more devastated. Didn't I play this card in the last round? Captain, why didn't you eat who back then? Is that so? Qin Mo replied nonchalantly, I guess I didn't know how to play just now. I wouldn't believe you. He was obviously trying to pick himself. Lin Feng scratched his head and glanced over at baby Feng, who had said he was a thief. He was still arranging the cards. He facepalmed. Was this called a thief? It seemed like baby Feng didn't understand the word thief well enough. Bojo was delighted, starting to collect the money. Lin Feng rolled up his sleeves, preparing for a counterattack on the third round. Who knew that as soon as the cards were placed on the table, she heard the person opposite her speak. Even her tone was very casual. Do you know why your luck is so bad? Bojo glanced over. Why? Because you hugged someone you shouldn't have. Qin Mo raised his hand casually, throwing out a card. Everyone, they had been wondering why their captain hadn't mentioned anything. So this was what he was waiting for. The person who shouldn't have been hugged shrunk his shoulders, biting the bunny's ear. He had a feeling that their captain would remember this for a long time. As expected. This was the third time Coco had been intercepted by his previous boss, Qin Mo. He started to realize that his captain wasn't trying to win money, he was trying to attack him. Anyone who played mahjong would understand. That kind of joy when you were about to push your cards and announce your victory. But suddenly, someone was in front of you. You would feel like your entire life was gloomy. And it wasn't just the first time, it was the third time. 3 times. Coco was starting to miss the good things about his fans. Compared to his little plushies, the captain was simply not human. Aw. His teammates who were playing mahjong at the same table had to hold back their laughter. The atmosphere was exceptionally harmonious. Yin Wuyao was right. It was right to relax before a big competition. At least compared to before, the layer of alienation on the surface was gone. Qin Mo won just like that. Some people even felt that their captain had never lost his memory. In that instant, he seemed to have calmed down. Even though there were too many people in this world who didn't understand and cursed. But there was one person. Ever since he created Supreme Alliance, he had never given up. He understood your passion even though he never said it. He became the support of the entire team. Even now, those people were shouting for him to leave. We all said that you would get what you give. In reality, this was wrong. Giving didn't mean you would get anything. It meant that you didn't let down what you fought for. The game started again. It was as though all emotions were swept away. Grandfather Butler even prepared beer. Everyone took a sip, flipped a peanut in their mouth, and continued to play mahjong, enjoying themselves. Bojo looked at this scene and found an excuse to go to the washroom. Grandfather Butler didn't say anything. After he followed her out, he said, "The laptop is ready, it's in your bedroom." Since she planned to hack into the network, she wouldn't let anyone see. Bojo turned her body, moving the USB flash drive and pressing both hands on the pure black keyboard. The crackling sound was so fast that no one could tell what she was doing. The only thing that could be seen was a letter flashing on the screen. Z, then came the code. 2 posts. As expected, it was the same IP. Bojo looked at the results and was even more certain of her guess. She continued to search for the IP address. Final destination, Jiang City, Xinghong Apartment, Unit 8, Building 6, 603. Bojo followed the IP address and found the location, directly hacking into the opponent's computer. At this moment, Quan didn't know. He had just ordered takeout and was planning to eat while watching the show. Now, the internet was fighting. No matter how united a team was, the fans might not necessarily like everyone in the team, so they could only fight. Who cares about the overall situation? Quan laughed and planned to post another post. But for some reason, he couldn't operate it. It wasn't a problem with the account. Maybe the account could be banned. But he had many other accounts. Why couldn't he operate the others? Not only couldn't he operate it, but he couldn't even log in. It kept showing that it was a page error. What the hell is going on? Quan only noticed the obvious abnormality but didn't know when the camera function of the computer was turned on. It automatically entered his live broadcast room. And in that room, there was only one message. It was the chat record between him and a stranger. This chat record appeared on the internet in the form of a screenshot. Everyone was stunned. They were obviously looking for trouble with the Supreme Alliance. And it was premeditated. They even dared to sow discord. Some of the fans finally calmed down. They thought about it. At such a time, they still came to the official site to cause trouble. This was obviously helping the black belt. After some people realized this, they froze and broke out in cold sweat. Some people still couldn't figure it out, but fortunately, the truth was out. Gradually, some attentive fans started to notice something. I was wondering why this netizen wouldn't let go of Almighty Qin. So it's because he has a grudge. Grudge? Why do you say that? Everyone's first reaction to that picture would be to find out what the two of them were talking about. But one of them should be recognized by the netizens. Isn't that the live streamer Quan who played games with Almighty Qin and won by luck? Later, after he died in the room, he was tortured by Almighty Qin and was killed as soon as he came out of the spring. His gaming experience was terrible to a certain extent. No wonder he tried so hard to influence. Everything else aside, I just hope that the fans of the Supreme Alliance will think about this matter and what we should do. Almighty Qin has indeed lost his memory. The organizing committee can't not make a decision. We are upset, but the Supreme Alliance must be even more upset. I played basketball in school. Although it's different from esports, but in any competitive event, how can they play without the support of the entire team? I can even understand how much psychological pressure they are under at this time. Do you think Almighty Qin still has a chance to participate? Just thinking about this makes me very upset. But no matter what, I will go to the venue and buy tickets because I understand that waiting for them is the only way to support them. The person who posted this never thought that there would be a day when his post would gain so many fans. Feng Yi was right about one thing. There were people like that. But people like that also needed to be driven. People kept coming out and changing things bit by bit. Although it couldn't suppress Quan's post for the time being. But a single spark could start a prairie fire. And Quan, who did these things, only realized that his actions had been exposed half an hour later. He wanted to explain in a panic but realized that his live broadcast room had long been turned on. The number of people watching online was unprecedentedly high and directly saw his expression. At that moment, he knew that he was finished. Perhaps in their circle, the bottom line was very low. But there was one thing that people hated to play tricks. This was something that all the netizens wouldn't forgive. Moreover, he used tricks to frame a professional team that was about to win glory for the country. No one would forgive him. From stealing Qin Mo's move to not admitting to it to this intentional action. This was simply challenging the most basic bottom line of a person. In an instant, the public opinion on the internet changed. Quan was scolded to the point that he didn't dare to do a live broadcast. At first, he complained that he was wronged and said that he was confused. He only did it when others said that. Now that he thought about it, he was simply being used. Would Bojio fall for this? This was the biggest joke in the world. The main culprit was someone else. But an accomplice was also a type of murderer. How could he say that he wasn't guilty when it was already carried out? She wasn't the Almighty and wouldn't consider so much. But there was one point. Everyone in the family was gaming properly and preparing for the competition. You came up with one plan after another and still say that you were wronged? Do you understand this saying? The one who started it first was cheap. After dealing with Quan, she didn't turn off her computer. Instead, she continued to dig, intending to dig out the culprit. But because of this, Bojio had prepared herself. Fan Jia was already prepared. After briefing Quan, she went offline early. She used a computer from a small internet cafe in an alley, so it was easy to clean up the traces. Bojio found the place but was aware that the computer had been turned off. Before it was turned off, it had been processed in detail. There was only one person who had such conditions, liked to use such methods, and was still haunting, Fan Jia. Bojio glanced at the screen. She curled her fingers and knocked on the table. In the Golden Triangle, she had placed all her attention on the Almighty, including how to get rid of his mistrust and murderous intent and how to stick to him. But she hadn't paid attention to the situation over there. After all, Kawang was already dead. The organization had been disbanded and many of its members had been sent to China. Even the poppies had been burned, leaving nothing behind. It was to prevent the darkness from rising again. Fan Jia hadn't been caught. Bo Jiu frowned slightly. What followed was a vague sense of unease. She wasn't sure what she was feeling uneasy about. She stood up and was about to light a cigarette. But before she could reach for it, someone pushed open the door and walked in. My sugar daddy is really something. Of all things, why did you learn to smoke? There wasn't a hint of anger in that cold voice. It was so familiar that Bo Jiu paused. She finally knew what she was feeling uneasy about. In fact, in this world, other than her little princess Qin, what else could make her feel uneasy? What's wrong? Qin Mo hadn't thought much of his words, but when he saw Bo Jiu's face, his fingers stilled. Is this guy unhappy? His words were usually more vicious, but he had never seen such an expression on her face. What was going on? That was Qin Mo's first reaction. He didn't even have time to think about it. Bo Jiu could hear the concern in his voice. She smiled. Nothing, I just suddenly craved candy and couldn't find it. That's why I wanted to smoke. Qin Mo glanced at her, his voice calm. Come over. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.